Welcome to Destiny Massive Breakdowns, episode 298. I'm illPhysics, and we're here with another deep dive into Destiny 2. This week, Lego is out under the weather, so taking a little bit of time. Please, self-care. It's important, people. So I'm taking the reins, but we have a very special guest and one of Destiny PvP community's most prominent creators to fill in. But first, we'd like to thank our newest sponsor, I'm K Rose, for their generous support. We'd also want to say thanks to our ongoing sponsor, Guardians, who give on a massive level every month. A Modern Viking, Bryce Aroni, Moonlight, Deacon, This Moment, Shazzle, and Askian Monk. Remember, if you'd like to support the show, please visit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com and click on the link to Patreon. You'll get access to members-only channel in the Discord, behind-the-scenes info, and input on the future of the show, plus access to our legendary annual merch drop. As a reminder, you can also earn a short shout out by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Ratings are great, but the reviews really help us to spread the word and get more ears tuned in every week. Keep it in mind as well that if you want to give general feedback regarding the show, particularly constructive feedback on how to continue to improve upon what we do, we have a ton of outlets outside of the reviews, such as the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord or our personal socials like Twitter. We take all of it to heart because we always want to give you all the best show possible every week. Finally, thanks to the Destiny Massive Breakdowns editors, Nettie Smith and Autodidactos, for their hard work on this show and Podcast versus Enemies, the Destiny PvE show that explains it all. If you think we sound great, know that it's because of them. All right. Without further ado, please let me introduce a Coneman who likely needs no introduction at all really here. But of course, we're ecstatic to have him here. Drewsky, yo, welcome, man. How you doing, brother?
What's up? It's good to be here. I love this podcast.
Yeah, man, okay. I didn't expect that.
This podcast goes way back. This has got some crazy roots, and to see it keep going on with yourself, and I think it's a true part of Destiny history, so I love this podcast. That
means a lot. It means a lot for sure. And of course, Mercules, Kutch, Lego, of course, as well. Kind of just, blessed in that history to kind of like know all these guys and for me, myself, I just feel very grateful to be here and to, I take it seriously. The responsibility to continue to give these massive breakdowns, of course, and to relay great information, on PvP and Destiny in general, in a way that gives folks kind of like an enhanced understanding of, an activity that we engage in, usually every week for all of us nerds, right? So cool. Let's start out. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in Destiny, PvP, and the wider creator community for folks that maybe don't know your footprint?
Yeah. So I'm mainly a Destiny 2 PvP player. A lot of people... There's this whole a cone meme that happened, where talk about cones, and that's because of some really, really nerdy talk and discoveries that, even again have roots in this kind of a podcast here. Just talking about the nitty gritty and the deep specifics and optimizations and theory crafting or build crafting in Destiny 2 and how that applies to PvP. And the more I feel what I've enjoyed most about Destiny 2 PvP and being, I guess, a content creator, or what sparked that for me was really learning more. And just the more I can learn about the game, the better that I can enjoy it, the better I can understand it and help my play. And for content creation, I originally started content creation because they say the best way to learn is to teach. So it was actually just 100%. I wanted to retain information. I really just wanted to, I'm really bad at retaining information. But in this way, this was a vehicle that allowed me to both retain information a little bit better for myself while sharing ideas and just having those, hearing other people's ideas and bouncing them back and forth. And that's kept me really engaged with the game for a really, really long time.
I mean, you're an OG, man. You are an OG for sure. And, I definitely want to double down on that. Something that I've realized, I mean, it's not as if I didn't recognize this before, but in this space, doing the podcast, streaming, full time, you realize by making those explanations, by relaying that information to your communities, that not only do you retain the information better, maybe apply the information better, but man, every time I get into these conversations with you, with Lego, with Cammy, because after we finished up recording for Firing Range, me and Cammy just sat in the call for like the next 15 minutes, just talking about, I think it's like zone control. I was just like, yo, Drew, because I'll mention something. I got to say, of course, definitely appreciate you hanging out in labs a lot lately. My community's been loving that, Drew. Seriously, it's for folks that don't know, my labs is my community's branded scrims. And so, definitely really looking forward to getting your input on the changes to our community design rule set, with big changes coming over the next 2 seasons. But I'm telling you, Drew, every time I talk to him, man, somebody's just like, yo, is Drew coming through? Hey, yo, is Drew coming through?
I'm always down, man. It's been such a source of joy for me. Seriously, it's been like, not to go off on a tangent here, but it's been really refreshing to have a place that is both like welcoming. I really appreciate your presence and, the way that you're very welcoming and have fostered a community that feels that way and is always inclusive. But and it doesn't mean like, I feel like there's like sometimes almost like a weird stigma. That doesn't mean that there aren't like some really high level players. Some of the best in the game play there too. I get to play in a style that, is like a good compromise to what I want. They get to play a style that, I feel like there's a compromise that everyone gets to play a good, portion of what of how they play in their identity. And everyone's just like super cool about it. And like, it's great. It feels like it's brought a little bit more of a meaningful center to someone in PvP, where like, unfortunately I've struggled to find a place where I can really be meaningful about my play. So yeah.
Yeah, intentional, and for that intentionality to be rewarded, in that gameplay loop for sure. And that's, one of the reasons that I created it in the fashion that I did. It's, central to how I enjoy the game, especially when I'm taking a break from pubs, which is, fairly frequent over the last year. But man, it's kept, seriously, like labs, our community scrims have kept me in content creation for Destiny 2. It's kept me engaged and playing the game, for me as an improvement focused player, and for my, for many in my community as well. So definitely enjoy your presence there. And just to cap off what I was saying about, relaying information and teaching, what I love about it also is kind of just like mixing it up, and through those discussions with people, again, like you, like Lego, like Cammy, whoever, nerds out over this stuff, it ends up kind of just like blossoming new lines of thought and perspective. Like so much of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast is stuff we just come up with in the moment. I'm just like, oh man, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, the secondary, the tertiary connections that you end up making, because we have so much experience. We have such a breadth of experience over the years playing the game with intention, playing PvP with intention, to the degree that we're thinking about mechanics and counter mechanics. We're thinking about offense. We're thinking about defense. We're thinking about every small element of our gameplay to try to just tweak it just a little bit. Just a little bit. That's how I don't want to get into this, because I've gotten into this, but that's how that counterbalance mod on shotguns, I'm going to leave it at that, people. That's how that ended up coming up, because I'm just like, man, is there anything I can do? Please, for the love of God, I just need my shotgun to kill consistently when I'm at that consistent, when I'm at that engagement range. And so, just to tweak our gameplay in the tiniest ways to get that small bit of an advantage over our opponent, or at the very least to just, get that small bit of improvement out of our gameplay loop. So definitely, appreciate those discussions. And both you and Cammy are people I appreciate, in particular, hearing truly unique perspectives on different elements of PvP. And I feel like although we all have our own like subjective preferences on what we'd like to see from PvP going forward, you both take a very holistic approach to the discussions, because we all have such a breadth, like I said, of playtime, that improvement focused experience when discussing hot topics. you both inspired me, at least, to also widen my field of view to other places in the sandbox, again, for that second and third degree connections where I can kind of illuminate those for others due to those years of ruminating over, like I said, the offense, the defense, the mechanics and the counter mechanics in our gameplay. So, we're all very intentional in our play styles, whatever those play styles may be. They're different for all three of us to a degree. And I feel like we enjoy those games within the game, right?
Oh, yeah. I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, seriously. Like Lego coined that term personally for me. I mean, I know it's not a fresh term or anything like that, but I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Because he's a big radar manipulation nerd as well. So, yeah. Cool. All right, Drew. So just to give everybody expectations for this episode, there are no weapons. This is going to be a little bit of a switch up. Bless again to Lego as he's recovering from, I think it's allergy stuff or a cold stuff, but he was pretty down. He was pretty down earlier in the week. He hit me up today, said he's feeling a lot better. So bless to him, of course. But no weapons this week, but we got questions for Drew, and I thought you guys would enjoy that. And so we can get right around to it. We'll start it off light on the first one, but the warm-up's going to come quick for the next one. So get ready for that.
Okay.
All right. So some of these questions we ended up fielding from the wider community on Twitter. I'll mention those shout outs, or I'll give those shout outs when we come to that. But other questions I kind of just provided specifically because, it's Drew. So we gotta ask some Drew specific questions. So the first one is, what was one change mentioned on the DCP Firing Range podcast last night with guest weapons team member Mercules, who now works at Bungie, of course, and abilities team member Eric Smith? What was one change mentioned for next season where you were the most excited about? And did any change mentioned throw up any red flags for you?
I think that there were a lot of good changes and really like promising changes. I kind of felt like I was like, my criticisms were being like dismantled one by one, which is like, I mean that in like a really good way, because like I'm like, man, when I got nothing else to say, I'm like, dude, that's awesome, like that's great. So there was a lot of good changes. The one that sticks out in my head as like, I might use this for both, like one that's like both a red flag and probably I'm most excited for is going to be the zoom changes. And
okay,
I'm most excited about that because I think that's been a problem in Destiny for like a really long time, like where weapon ranges just don't feel very well defined. Like you know generally what they are, but there's usually weapons over the generations of Destiny, even just Destiny 2 at this point, where there are some of them that just they push out past their band, right? And they often become the most used ones, and they bleed into other weapons usage, and then as a result they kind of step on other weapons, and it's really confusing sometimes. I find, like in some fights, like asking yourself, like was I in my optimal range, was I not at long enough range or short enough range, whatever it is. So I think that making those weapon ranges very clear is good. There's a lot of minute things they mentioned in that too, with how they're going to be handling the mid-range, and that's like autos, pulses, hand cannons, and the rifle class, and how that's like there's a bunch of, like, you have to listen to it. There's a bunch of things within there that, like, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into, but I'm very happy about the change, and it seems very promising. It also addresses rangefinder as like pretty much like a pretty big outlier. And I think that there's still going to be some good benefit to zoom, because as Merc said that like higher zoom meant less recoil, better accuracy, and further out aim assist. The aim assist is kind of like a double-edged sword, because closer up it's like technically a smaller aim assist cone, and further out it's like, but it's essentially pushing it out, right? Like you're pushing it out a bit. But anyways, there's still plenty of benefit. So again, I think that the zoom normalization, or like them decoupling the damage from that equation, is going to be overall like pretty healthy for the game's like ranges. And I think that they have a lot of space, especially going into this, to kind of play with the weapons and how they balance them out. And they already talked about mid-range, if you want to hear the specifics of that. The red flag it throws up for me is, I wonder to myself, if autos, pulses, and hand cannons are all considered mid-range, and they gave an example like an aggressive rangefinder hand cannon. Aggressive, so the 120s with rangefinder will be able to get up to somewhere around 40 meters, and let's say and pulses will get up to 40 meters. And I think autos will be able to do somewhere around the same. I don't know what the specifics on the archetype or whatever is for that. In that case, what stops me from choosing a hand cannon every time? I know there's a lot more levers to that. Like, there's a lot more factors, like, some pulses just kill faster. And they mentioned some things like, past that damage drop, past the optimal range, the rifle class weapons, like let's say pulses or autos, are going to maintain their damage drop off better. And there's different levers past the optimal range that's going to separate them. But again, for argument's sake, if I had to give a criticism, because honestly, a lot of the changes in the podcast seem pretty good, I would say that I trust them for the tuning on this, but I hope that it does feel different enough between weapons. That would be my thing.
Gotcha. Did they mention any kind of additional levers that they could tune on different archetypes, for example, or even subfamilies that maybe we haven't heard of before?
I'm not sure. I think they have. I'm not exactly sure. I do know I think I'm nearly positive Merc mentioned that the aggressive hand cannons will have different tuning than non-aggressive hand cannons. So that example of like a 40-meter rangefinder or like a rangefinder aggressive hand cannon is probably like the highest potential for it, like a max range rangefinder aggressive hand cannon. So I do have good faith that there is going to be enough separation. I guess like it was hard. I don't know. For me, I felt there was a lot of good changes, I thought, on that podcast, that it was hard for me to criticize. So if I had to choose one criticism, that would be it.
Okay. And yeah, just to reiterate, I think hopefully I'm not oversimplifying this, but the change that they're making to zoom for folks that aren't familiar with it and to rangefinders, they're basically decoupling the additional range that you get from zoom and from rangefinder on these different archetypes and subfamilies, and they're normalizing the zoom across subfamilies and archetypes, or maybe just archetypes. So all SMGs may end up having like the same zoom, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe Drew knows a little bit more about that, but basically decoupling the effects of range on zoom and just removing the effect of increased range on rangefinder and keeping the other benefits to rangefinder. Is that about right?
Yeah, basically that's pretty much it. It's like removing the damage part of the equation from the zoom.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you said it exactly right, that it just said it, of course, and Chris Proctor has said it, the head on the weapons team, that it's become just so complicated, with all these new perks, and stuff gets buffed or stuff gets nerfed, and it ends up destroying a certain weapon or destroying a certain subfamily of weapon. And then, some just end up becoming wildly out of band, right? Just you can't control it. It's kind of like exponential simply because that unique zoom on that weapon, and then the perks that end up getting created or refined or reworked that just so happens to come on that weapon, right? So yep. I can imagine that it's become a bit of a nightmare, especially as we've gotten so many new perks, impactful perks on these weapons, so much new synergy as well. Let's not forget that. Since Witch Queen, we've gotten I've talked about this quite a bit, so much synergy between different perks in those final two columns, right? I feel like they've really doubled down on, something like hipfire grip with offhand strike, right? Or really double down on the classic concept of a synergy between an outlaw and a kill clip. We have so many different perks that do that synergy, and it ends up being a greater sum than the individual parts, right? And it's really cool. But what that does is it continues to kind of throw certain weapons out of band, because of that zoom. So I know that they're really, looking forward to a more simple vision with regards to weapon tuning once things are normalized a little bit. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, I think that the zoom stuff is again, it's especially good. Like Merc really, I think phrased it really well. Is that weapons that were be able to get higher zoom pushed into other ranges or like outside their range and capability and potentially bled into other weapons, while now invalidating nearly every other weapon that couldn't do that in its class. And we've seen that so much, like with the SMGs. You know, the BXR 55 Battler is my favorite gun in the game, but you know, it was given originally a 20 zoom to match that of the original, like, you know, the Halo games that it references, and it's just unfortunate. Even though it's like, you know, in my opinion, like 450 pulses like aren't, you know, definitely I don't think the greatest, probably the worst pulse archetype, but it's still, because of that, like made it perform like so, you know what I mean, out of band in its potential. We've seen, like, you know, even some rare cases with hand cannons as well. It's just like weapons that have that capability. It's just, again, like Merc said, they bleed into other ranges while invalidating the other ones that can do it. So it's, yeah, I'm happy they're fixing that.
Yeah, and just to kind of, for completeness, folks, you know, I've been playing against Drewsky a lot in our community scrims, and I gotta say, you say that 450s, especially after what was it, like a zoom nerf to the Battler? Yep. You know, you say that they're nothing to write home about, but man, it's real tough to outgun you, bro.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm in range, we'll get into it later, but there's like an odd reason why I enjoy using that archetype, but.
All right. Well, we'll keep it moving. Yeah. Question. Speaking again of the games within the game, right? We all know you're a big fan, of course, of radar manipulation on Hunter's Night Stalker class. The new Strand Hunter artifact coming next season, Threaded Spectre, you know, we're going to get a Strand decoy, right? A Strand decoy, among other things, that drops by activating your class ability and also pings the radar. Stevie Danger from Twitter asks what you think of this new radar manipulation mechanic. Will it be enough to finally allow you to commit to Strand Hunter, which, you know, we saw you on quite a bit when it released, in a more competitive setting?
Yeah, I'm like over the moon excited for this, because I've said a lot that
means we should all be scared. I just want to go ahead and say, everybody, we should all be scared. Please continue.
I'm so excited, man, because like it's not even just like radar ping. It's like they give it the full thing. It gives like red reticle, which is like on I don't know if it does it on MNK, but I know on console, like it's, if you play the old Halo games, when you drag your reticle over a target and you're basically, your crosshairs turn red to tell you that you have the aim assist cone over them, like not necessarily the accuracy cone, but it tells you when your aim assist cone is over them, and like that's like an amazing amount of information that it gives you. But it gives that out, it gives a nameplate out, and it pings the radar. Like, so it's like they kind of give it the full traits of like looking like an actual person, which I'm really excited for. No. It's so funny. So I think that this is going to be really fun to play around with, and I think it is definitely going to be enough to allow me to commit to Strand Hunter in a more competitive setting. I think that I was playing it a lot on launch, and like what really took the wind out of, I guess, my sails on it was like that super change, because I think the super is the weakest part of the kit, which is unfortunate, because supers in Destiny, they're real important, man. Like, the super clock in general puts a lot of pressure on your opponents to tell them, hey, you got to win the game, or like you got to convert on the game, or else we're going to come back. Or it's like, yep. Like it forces them to play differently when that clock exists. And not having a super that demands, like, I mean, sure, it gives a bit of pressure, but like, yeah, that super is like really, really weak right now. And when it got changed for PvE to like, they changed the damage model. Look, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but in PvP, what made me hold on and be like, okay, I can learn this, is that if you sweet spot did the like little critical hit thing at the end of the whip, if you sweet spot hit another super, it didn't matter what super it was in the game, it died in one light hit. And I was like, man, like this seems like some crazy glass cannon stuff. Like, I remember just like cracking the whip at a Dawnblade midair and they just died, and I was like, dude, this is crazy. So it was like you're a glass cannon a bit, but when that got changed for PvE, it also made it not able to do that in PvP, which I was like, oh no, like, oh, it's so. So
what you're saying is that those PvE folks ended up. It was a Uno reverse.
Yep, it was. PvE folks we were on that end this time.
Told us on exactly. We were on that end this time. Y'all PvE people, don't ever say we ain't do nothing for you. All right, don't ever say we ain't do nothing for you. Crazy.
I'm hoping this ability though will, like, I'm gonna take another stab at the super, really try and make the best I can out of it. But yeah, this ability's got me really excited because right now, the more I played Night Stalker with Invis and the Smoke Nade and stuff like that, the more I realized I don't even think I need Invis. So long as I have the Smoke Nade, I'm very confident in what I can do to an opponent. So now, that kind of an aspect, I've been so bound to, Night Stalker forever now, because that just doesn't exist on another class in the game. That kind of, play or what you can do to, kind of make your opponents second guess themselves, that just doesn't exist on any other class. But now it will. Even if the decoy does look completely fake, it's there's time. The thing that I think of in my head is dude, what if I put it so just a leg was sticking out of a wall or something, or an arm or something, you know what I mean? And they see the radar ping, I'm not gonna show them that it's a decoy, but or I can something me and Cam like to do is that we like to put down barricades or whatever and just leave my smoke bomb on it to make them think that we're playing the barricade. And it's there's little funny things you can do that make people really question it allows us to metagame in a way where we know the general flow of combat and what happens when you see a Titan behind a barricade, someone playing a rift, or where people expect you to be, and we get to do some really goofy things that make people double second guess that. So I'm hoping that this is going to allow that same thing, and now I'm going to have to give the mantle to, when me and Cam play together, we refuse to not take an Invis class with us, so I'm all right, Cam, well, you take the Invis class now, because I'm moving on. I'm moving on to bigger and better things, so we'll see.
Evolution.
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
That just reminded me of old cartoons, like Tom and Jerry cartoons, or Bugs Bunny cartoons, where you just see Bugs Bunny dressed up in a dress like a woman and pull up the skirt on his leg and shake it around a corner or something like that to bait whoever he's Elmer Fudd or somebody like that around a corner. That's what it reminds me of with this decoy. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
It's really funny. I mean, I remember there's a few people that have been I don't think that, I'm just not seeing the value in PvP. Are people really gonna fall for that? And I'm just man, y'all, a couple of years ago, y'all told me that no, it's Invis and that Smoke Nade's never gonna work on a good player. I might not be the best player, but there's a few good players that I think I've fooled. Quite a few times now. So
Yep.
And,
the example that I always give right here. The example that I always give is, I don't know if I put quite a few clips on Twitter where I bait Titans through barricades, right? You just do that simple bait. You jump forward on a hunter, and then you just use strafe jump, your power jump, to jump back, and then just shotgun. They slide through, you shotgun, you go about your day, Very straightforward, simple bait, nothing new, but a lot of people don't do it. And then there's always 2 or 3 long-time players that are just that'll never bait me. That'll never bait me. You know what I'm saying? You're just doing this against noobs.
Yeah, man, game moves fast in the moment, man.
Exactly. And your impulse is to take that. Say, for example, you're weak and there's a hunter on the other side of that barricade and they jump forward. You're just going to instinctively slide through most times. It has, in the last, I don't know, I've been focusing on it, to try to get some statistics in my head ever since those comments started dropping. And since the beginning of the year, there has been one Titan ever who has not taken the bait. Every other single Titan has taken it. And that's not to diminish the skill. I'm not saying this to, diminish the skill of players on the side. It happens to me too. And not with that bait. I don't fall for that one. But when you talk about that smoke, I remember a very, very particular game of Trials on Endless Vale that it was a 4-4, and I lost it because a Night Stalker baited me with smoke at Vex Gate, and I was through. It slowed me. I couldn't see anything, and it was just at the right moment they popped out and knocked me out. And I watched the Guardian Theater afterwards, and they were just talking massive shit. But hey, they got that dub, and it was a really good bait. And one of the more experienced players just in this game, just because I don't touch grass for the last several years, it just automatically makes me. And yet I fell for that. So in the moment, exactly what you said, game moves fast.
Yep.
Game moves fast.
Yeah.
So
the stuff that you can do with just a radar ping for me is the moment I started realizing it was that I think I always Lunars, he doesn't play the game much anymore, but he's my model player. He's the best in the game to me. I love his play style. I love the style in which he plays and how he plays is just Like
Yep.
I just look up to
He's so
that.
intentional on the most micro level. It is crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I agree.
So like something that he does, and not limited to him, there's like lots of good players that are very good at playing their space, is they do something that they're very good at, like playing at the edge of their radar and the edge of the inner part of the radar, so that it gives the illusion that they're aggressing on a target to draw them out, but they're actually waiting right at the edge where they might as well be on like the outer perimeter of the radar, like the outer part, which is like quite far. And something I realized that smoke lets me do, it's like the smoke lets me like just fake that I'm like so much closer than I am to people, and it lets me completely kill their depth perception. So like if I put something like like a smoke really close and I'm sitting like a little further back or whatever, like their depth perception's killed. If someone puts a barricade up, I can smoke like even the ceiling on top of them, and it's almost like killing their radar in that way, or their depth perception, like, you know, in terms of like awareness on the radar. I can do things like, this is limited to invis, of course, but like there's times where I put a smoke further behind me and I'm the one baiting my smoke and playing close. So it's like it gives me so much range to play with like distance, and like blinding people's like expectations of like how far I am playing. And then that's something that I'm excited to like hopefully be able to do with this decoy, because you can do something similar, right? Like I can do things like, you know, put a decoy up front, grapple really quickly, get out like and create a gap, or like what if I were to like, I don't know, decoy far and like grapple in, let go of it, so I'm just kind of hurling through the air at a little faster rate than they can expect. I don't know. That's kind of stuff that I'm like thinking of. So like I think that could be really interesting. Just again being able to have that ability on another class.
Yeah.
And like even like back in the days with like Void 3.0 came out, I think that no doubt in my mind Invis was way too strong, but I was having a really really fun time with yeah, I don't know. I was a little arrogant at this time, because it felt really funny that a lot of people would just like kind of hold forward with Invis, and I developed this kind of weird metagaming where I would start by like just Invis lurking somewhere, and then like putting a smoke there because they think I'm gonna be there, to like then I would like, they know it's a smoke, so I would show them the smoke or like put it somewhere where I know they could see it. They leave it there. I'd wait 3 seconds and just walk out on the smoke, because they think it's a smoke and I've shown them it's a smoke. And it was really funny. So I'm really amped to see what kind of like really silly mind games you can do with this that are like funny. So yeah.
This is too much. This is crazy. Why are you giving these people these ideas, bro? Look, man, I'm just trying to get into a simple gunfight. You giving these people all these ideas, bro. Oh, cool. That's cool. All right. Well, okay, so I was going to say this before we get on to the next question. Yeah, so I guess a very simple example, and then I'll ask you a quick question, and we'll keep it moving. Because, like I said, with Lego, it's the same sort of thing. You guys always give me new ideas
on the fly,
whenever you're discussing something. Yeah, most definitely. Is a simple concept would be just if you get weak, right? You turn a corner, and I don't know, 8 times out of 10, probably, maybe less in this meta. It gets really weird in this passive meta, but say eight times out of 10, people are going to push that advantage, right? Because you're weak and you're on a hunter, and maybe you don't have Worm Husk on. You end up dodging on that corner, and you end up leaving the decoy.
Yeah.
You end up leaving the decoy. And so if folks don't know, the additional benefit of that decoy is you do enough damage to it and it explodes and it releases threadlings, right? It's a crazy troll.
Yeah,
it's a crazy troll. That's why we're all like super excited about it. And so that obviously provides like an opening. You know, people have to be careful that it could be a decoy. So that's an example right there, simple example everybody can kind of perceive with regards to this new aspect on Hunter Strand. But I do wonder, man, they reworked a bunch of different exotics. What are we doing with Bombardiers, bro? What are we doing with Bombardiers?
People have been asking me about
Bombardiers has so much potential, man. It has so much potential. The reason why I first jumped on to Bombardiers was I was testing. I was like, man, if I can utilize Bombardiers, Bombardiers are hunter exotic that when you dodge ends up leaving this very whimsical bomb behind,
like a morph bomb from
that
Metroid,
explodes.
If you've ever played that.
Yes, exactly. And then it just woo, it makes this like whimsical sound, woo, and explodes. And the effect is an effect that is relative or, whatever effect is associated with that particular elemental affinity. So for stasis, it leaves a slow effect. So I was like, man, if I can utilize bombardiers to dodge and slow my enemy, that means I don't have to use Winter's Shroud on stasis, which does the same thing, basically, practically does the same thing. It slows targets within the radius of your dodge, and therefore I can end up equipping Shatter Dive and Touch of Winter, for example, to enhance my dust fields. And so I can get the best of all those worlds, of all three of those aspects. So that was my thought. But Bombardiers are weird because there's just not enough. It's a sloppy exotic now, and that's not. Maybe sloppy is not the word. It's just an exotic that's been just outdated is the word I should say, actually, because it's not sloppy. It's just outdated simply because of the fact that it hasn't been reworked for so long that it doesn't exactly line up and synergize with the subclasses. So for stasis, for example, people can, number one, easily get out of that bombardier bomb if they've got good enough movement. And these days, with the movement upgrades that we have, people have that movement oftentimes. So you don't even end up slowing them. They don't actually end up, catching that bomb within that radius. And then with stasis, even with Winter Shroud equipped, you end up slowing them. And then the bomb finally goes off and maybe it slows them. And it provides some slow stacks. It'd be nice if, I don't know, the bomb exploded a little bit faster, or maybe there was a slightly larger radius. But either way, it just added more slow stacks on top of it. And maybe you might end up getting almost a freeze, especially if you end up giving them one shuriken, and we're about to get shurikens buffed. My point behind all of this is I do wonder what that bombardier bomb, do we know what actual interaction, does it have an interaction with Strand?
I think it severs. I believe it severs.
It severs?
Yep. Interesting.
It's gonna be a troll, bro.
Yeah, I mean the thing is to think about
that
with the news with this new decoy is there seems to be a lot of I really think that, and I think Eric said this on the podcast that they're really happy with where Strand landed. I'm really happy with the release of Strand, and because right now it just feels feels like it has, it's a subclass and nothing feels overtly oppressive on, yet it all feels valuable. And it has a massive toolbox. So what I was thinking with this, when you think of bombardiers, I don't think I'm gonna build it in this way, but it has that decoy. You're right. Does have the potential to be used not even as a decoy, but as a defensive maneuver, a super defensive. Hey, I'm weak. They're gonna push me again. You can literally leave that as they're pushing you in transition to run into it and deal with it and the little things that it makes. And then if you bombardier, it kind of doubles down on the defensive functionality of it. There's a lot of ways that I think it looks like you can play it. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I'll just say it again, with so many exotics getting reworked next season or whatnot. And like I said, I probably a poor choice of words to say a sloppy exotic. It's just one that's outdated. So I apologize for that. Definitely not trying to get on any dev's bad side. But yeah, I would hope that Bombardiers gets reworked in the near future in kind of a similar way that they've continued to update Chromatic Fire, which Chromatic Fire, its exotic perk is dependent, of course, upon the elemental affinity of the subclass of the user. So really interesting stuff. And I look forward to that because I've thought about Bombardiers a lot. And of course, like I said, they're reworking a bunch of exotics. So it sounds like it's just kind of in tow. All right. Next question. This is a good one. So Bungie is putting a lot of dev time into evolving our weapon reticles to convey more useful information in a non-intrusive and in a way where it takes into account, you can take it into account during engagements, but it doesn't detract our attention necessary to effectively engage. So examples include rebuilding reticles to scale visual elements like auto aim and accuracy with field of view, charge meters for fusions and swords, custom exotic weapon reticles to denote active exotic perks, and reticles that change color when enemies are within that weapon's engagement range. Question is, what other information do you think would be useful to include in reticle depiction? The same sort of information a player could take into account almost subconsciously while not also cluttering the UI.
I'm not sure what they could do more than that. And I think that there's a line that they have to be careful that they're walking, because you risk, again, in the question said, over cluttering the UI and over cluttering the reticles. which is not something I'd like. But I will say this much. I think that information in reticles is pretty important. I think there's a good amount of information, honestly, at the moment. Like, I think of hand cannons, and this has been since, like, I think the release of D2. If you'd, like, notice when you're shooting a hand cannon, even while, like, ignoring hipfire, like, even while ADS, it has, like, the little point, and then there's usually, like, 2 little side brackets, and those side brackets expand as you shoot, and that tells you your accuracy cone. Like, that tries to tell you, like, the level of your accuracy cone, and, like, you know, you do what you will with that. So I think that kind of stuff is really important, but I think that, again, it's a fine line to walk, because, you know, when you start cluttering too much, then it becomes, like, annoying or, like, just, like, hard to keep track. Reticle information is really important. That is what originally sent me down the whole cone rabbit hole, to discover some of really old stuff that Merck had done and some research and theories that he had of how it worked, which ended up, like, almost entirely being true. And it was all based on, like, those reticles. And I was so intrigued by the difference between, you know, this was a hot topic. I mean, it persists to be a hot topic, but back in the day it was a really hot one, because the reticle information on a controller in M&K was different. And I wanted to understand why that was. And then I just ended up stumbling into this whole thing and just going so far down this rabbit hole. And, you know, now we have the cone meme. But so to that point, I think that, yeah, it is really important. Even the weapon that I prefer to use now, a big reason I prefer to use, other than my nostalgia and love for Halo, but a big reason I choose, and you know what, maybe I'm just, like, being a boomer with this and I'm just used to it as well, but a big reason I choose to use that gun is because that reticle is just, like, man, like, I feel like it's just, to me, it's like almost like the perfect reticle.
It's chef's kiss.
It's like, it's amazing. It's a reticle that, like, so it's got, like, the 4 little lines, the cross hairs, I guess, quite literally, and then it has a circle, and that circle is the aim assist cone, and the other 4 make up the accuracy cone. So I know, like, I can just laser in my eyes and, like, follow it and know exactly, like, when I'm properly over my target, and, like, it's so clear because of the full zoom. Like, it's just, like, no jank, no gimmicks. Tell me where my aim, like, you know, tell me what my bloom's at. Show me where my aim assist is at. Like, you know, my margin of error to play with, and it's just great. So again, I do think that this is, like, overall a good thing. Don't know what more they can add to that, but, like, hopefully just not too much to make it a negative experience.
Well, I trust them based on what you say with regards to the BXR, you know, BXR being a fairly recent weapon, I guess. I guess it's like a year and a half old or whatnot. But you know, I trust that work for sure. And based on what I've seen, the details behind which particular changes and how they're making changes, that they had a preview as well of some of those reticle changes on the Bungie website. It looked pretty clean. So I have a lot of faith in that team to find that delicate balance. The one thing I gotta say is, man, we gotta, I'm telling you, I can't outgun this BXR people. Y'all gotta stop giving him stuff. Y'all got to stop giving Drew stuff. I make modifiers all the time for labs, and I'm about to just nerf his whole kit, because it's getting crazy, man. He be jump scaring me with this invis crazy stuff, man. Like, bro, oh man, just fight me, man. I'm fighting games and games with this dude. Oh boy. Yeah,
I mean, like I mentioned it earlier, I guess this is a fun time to get into it. The reason I like the BXR as well is, to be honest, in the 450 RPM archetype is, like, it has I think a steep cost by comparison, but it's a glorified hand cannon.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like, spec range into pulse and stuff like that. I just don't believe in that. I don't care what my range is. I can have, like, 0 range and I wouldn't care, as long as I can have, like, what hand cannon ranges of, like, I don't know, most of my hand cannons set like 30 to 35 meters, which, as long as I have that, I just don't care. Like, it's like my BXR roll currently has an optimal range of 35 meters, and I think compared to, like, some pulses in the game or somehow some people spec it, like, is, like, nothing, because it's like hand cannon range. The reason I choose the BR over that, like, aside from, like, you know, the crosshair information, is that it just carries its damage fall off better than a hand cannon. Right, so, like, when
I was about to say that. I was about to say that.
When I'm out of range, I'm, like, maybe not dealing full damage, but I can still put pressure, and I like. Basically, you're trading off, because a 450 RPM pulse is, for all intents and purposes, like, just a 140 hand cannon. They have the same TTK and the same cadence, which I love. Like, I absolutely love that, and despite maybe not ever being the favorable meta pulse, to me that just makes sense to my muscle memory, which is why I use it. And then, like, you are essentially giving up DPS for like more versatility. Is that the word? I don't know. Like
versatility.
Yeah,
No,
I guess
you're right. You're right.
Like
yeah.
I can.
It's a use case for a few different situations that a classic pulse maybe wouldn't excel at.
Yeah, exactly. And like for me, again, I'm just not the type of pulse player that. I talked about it in my chat today. Like, I used to say a long time ago that I'm like, man, pulses in this game just don't feel like the BR, man. And if they felt like the BR, like, I'd use them more, but they just don't. And then they added the BXR, so I'm like, cool. I don't like, and that was a source of confusion to me when they nerfed the zoom on it, because I was always thinking, I'm like, dude, why people use this at, like, I mean, like, I get it, like, the range is, like, yeah, it's supposed to have that, I guess, but I'm like, man, I just, like, don't care. Like, I was never the one. I'm never trying to, like, sit out in Narnia with a pulse. I'm like, I'm trying to be in the action. I use the hipfire for a reason.
Of course. Yeah. And it's, like, what I love about the BXR, and it just kind of becomes even more apparent with you discussing kind of the particulars, the nuances of that particular weapon, both as a lightweight weapon and its own unique weapon, right? Is that I love it when Bungie ends up just doubling down on what a particular weapon or particular exotic or what it does.
Yep.
It doesn't try to do everything, but
Yep.
what it does really, really well. And it's super crispy if you commit to the play style around it, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. You end up giving up some of that range and some of that impact at range that a classic pulse is really good at. But what you end up gaining is a weapon that you can be more mobile with. Obviously, it's a lightweight, so you end up. It does it have its own frame, or
it
is
has
it
a
lightweight?
custom frame. It doesn't get the lightweight bonus, but it's like
Oh, it doesn't get the lightweight
no,
bonus?
it
I didn't know
doesn't.
that.
Yeah, it's the hipfire functionality replaces the lightweight.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So, I mean, at the very least, it has above average like handling,
Yep.
Similar to a lightweight frame. But yeah, just like you said, you gain some additional versatility to engage. You can still engage at those early pulse rifle ranges, but you can just get up in somebody's face that has a hand cannon. And yeah, you said similar TTK, and I can attest to it. It's very, very, very difficult to outgun that, especially if people are speccing synergistically into, the perks, the barrels, et cetera, et cetera. So, yep, I'm definitely with you on that. I guess a small question. I don't want to get too off here, but Battlescar, lightweight frame, 450 RPM, world drop pulse rifle. I ended up picking it up with arrowhead break, accurized rounds, or steady rounds, keep away, Eye of the Storm, and a stability masterwork. Like, what do we think of?
That's pretty perfect to me. It sounds like perfect to me.
Gotcha. So, I mean, obviously, we're not talking about a BXR like frame with the hip fire or whatnot, but 99 recoil, I can run and gun with that, right? 76 handling.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Just
double checking.
I
kept
liked
it.
that frame because you're giving up, like, I guess two things, but you're trading them for versatility against a hand. You have the damage profile of a 140, but not the DPS. So you're giving up the ability to play cover as easily, and that comes up against like some top level players where they'll pixel peek you so perfectly that your whole burst won't hit them, which is tough. And then like you're giving up like the traditional like range on most 450 pulses. Like, at least I don't know how I play them or like what I care about them. Like, you're kind of trading off that crazy range, almost, I want to say borderline scout rifle dueling range. And then, but what you're gaining is you're gaining a familiar like cadence, because again it's like the 140 hand cannons, and it's just a more versatile weapon. It's like it's not exactly mastering anything, I think, incredibly, but I find that the 450 pulses in general are just like super just solid versatile feeling weapons, and that's what I want. Like, the BR obviously is like the pinnacle of that, with like being able to have the hip fire and like it's got some great handling and stuff. But that's like what I want in a weapon. For a long time before the BR, I like to use Mida a lot, just because the value proposition of that weapon to me was just like, this weapon does nothing like maybe incredibly lethal anywhere, but like I know that
but it's extremely consistent. Yeah,
it's so consistent. Like, I don't have to worry about a range unless I'm like going like against a sidearm or an SMG, which like it gives anyone trouble in close range. But there's not a range where it feels like my gun can't apply itself, and that's what I value most.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I'd love to make the type of comparisons where we're just like, man, what is that consistent gunner scout rifle of scout rifles? Well, of course, it's MITA. What's that consistent gunner, of like, it doesn't do anything crazy, like, no time to explain, but it's just a gun. Vigilance wing, yep. Hands down. What's that gunner of a hand cannon? You know what I'm saying? It's Dire Promise. Like whenever I want to go back to the most consistent of the consistent, obviously it's been Power Crept, so I'm not, speaking on that. But whenever I need to go back to the most consistent of consistent hand cannons with just everything about it is just beautiful. It comes to that tip, beautiful model, great stat package. Obviously it's been stat crept. So I'm just,
I guess that's kind of like evolved into rows, but like, yeah. For most, I guess, but yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I love thinking about that. Like, what is that consistent, fusion rifle? What's that a consistent of consistent, shotgun? I don't know if we could even say that about shotguns, but nonetheless, that's always fascinating to me for sure. So, all right, cool. We'll keep it going or else it'll just turn into just let me and Lego and get off in like 3 hours. Yeah, we just get off all these tangents and just start talking about our love. Exactly. And it's just that common love for the game, man, and PvP. Next season, aggressive frame submachine guns will have their base damage reduced, and Immortal, the new SMG that should be in rotation this weekend, actually, for trials, will have its base range, I believe it's this weekend, will have its base range reduced by 10 stat points. Do you think this will be enough to bring them in line until, and specifically Immortal in line, until that season 22, so next season is 21, folks, 22 is the season after this coming season. Do you think that'll be enough to bring them in line until the decoupling of range from the zoom stat and rangefinder perk arrive in season 22?
This is really hard to tell, honestly.
Drewsky, you're not here. You're not here for that. Everybody wants a secure 100% answer from you, bro. Like, that's the expectation.
I know. I want to say, okay, so I think it's promising.
Okay.
But I don't think that it's going to be like, this gun's still gonna be like, I think, like, pretty top. I think it's still gonna be at the top. I think that the way that the damage changes is going to result in is, I believe it's 4 resilience will now be the new TTK shift. Previously that was 8, and then 3 resilience will be the new breakpoint. I'm like kind of estimating here. It should be logically, but like 3 resilience should be in and around the points to counter target lock. The problem with this, this is a lot more accessible, which is great, because if you're a hunter, having to go like turbo, fully min-max, like my gear can barely do this in some cases, like 10, 7, sure. 8. So like you have to get like 10 mobility, 7 resilience because you have to hit the 7 so you're not getting like obliterated by SMGs, and 8 recovery because it's the best you can do, like it's the most min-max value. Like that is like a little tough. Again, even for I play this game a lot, it's tough to hit that. So having it more accessible at that breakpoint will be good, because the average aggressive SMG will be like a 0.75 optimal TTK at 4 res, and then with target lock, I believe it's what it currently is at 7. But that's where the problem lies. It's what it currently is. So if you're running 7 resilience and you're getting deleted by Immortal with target lock, that part's not changing. So I mean, like, I'm happy that this is happening. I think it will have a good effect, and I can't expect much more, I think, than this at the moment, simply because we have such way bigger changes on the horizon.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be around still, and it's going to be strong.
Yeah. See, the two things that come to mind for me are, number one, I have long advocated for small changes, and then seeing how the meta settles. I think that's a more palatable approach. Yeah. I can swallow that better than these sweeping changes that oftentimes have like unintended or unknown shifts in the sandbox. Just because there's just so many factors to keep track of, right? It's just impossible to see how every different element that changes, especially if it's a big change, is going to end up, shifting the tide. So that's one. And then two is, I'm always concerned about this because what's going to happen, right, is the target locks, especially the God roll target lock rangefinders, it's gonna shift to us. You know, you won't see them as much in like a mid skill bracket, certainly not a low skill bracket, right? But you know, those folks that always are making sure, which is rightfully so, this is not a judgment statement, rightfully so, ensuring that they have literally the best, grind their butts off to make sure they have the best of a particular weapon, whether it be meta or otherwise, you know, that's going to end up falling to the high experience, high skill tiers. So that's probably what I'm most, you know, underwhelmed by for next season is I'm probably myself, you, whenever we, you know, step in and face one of those teams, they're still going to have the exact same advantage that they have now with that weapon. So one more season. And hopefully, you know, these large sweeping changes with regards to normalizing zoom and, you know, pulling rangefinder a little bit closer to other perks in its tier, you know, will be beneficial for us as well. And, you know, I've said this as well. The fact that I think it's reasonable that everybody should have the expectation that when Bungie makes these changes to the sandbox, that it first addresses the largest population, which is not us at the top, right?
Yep.
As long as they come back around to us, hopefully within a season or a half a season. DMT was like a great example of that. They reworked DMT. It was crazy overpowered, you know, on PC, on M&K. And within a half season, they ended up addressing that. That's palatable. I can swallow that, you know, because totally understandable, unintended. And they came right back around to it very, very quickly. And, you know, we were able to get back to it. So cool. All right. Next question. Ooh, this is a good one. I know that you have at once been a connoisseur of the Stasis Hunter exotic Mask of Bakris. Next season, it'll grant a 6% bonus to weapon damage in PvP after dodge. Do we know if it will retain the requirement for the weapon buffed to be of arc affinity? Also, Arctic Bear on Twitter wants to know what arc weapon are you looking forward to pairing with it, if so? Also, and this is why I provided you with a copy of this so you could keep track of the questions because it's like multi-layered. Also, so there's a part of the exotic perk.
The hidden damage bonus against slow targets.
Exactly. Increased damage to slowed or frozen opponents. Do we know if that's going to be extended to PvP opponents as opposed to what was originally and currently only against PvE combatants?
Okay. I mean, I think that it does have to stay arc because they didn't say, like, they didn't specify otherwise, so I'm going to assume it's staying arc because at the beginning of the article they also said, like, things are staying the way they are unless specified otherwise.
Okay,
arc weapon that I'm looking forward to, I don't think I have any, like, arc weapon that's, like, immediately on the top of my head. There's a finite impactor, like, I don't know, I use some weird weapons. There's a finite impactor that, like, I'm always excited to use with arc stuff, so I'm like, sure. Matador if all else fails. The mecha sniper is an arc weapon, so I guess I'll take that. And then I guess the elephant in the room is Aikilos SMG to reverse the nerfs. So I don't know, those are few, I guess. And then will the increased damage to slowed targets? I was under the impression that currently works in PvP, so I will have to double check that myself.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah, I'm pretty terrified of that. Like, I already don't think that this needed any sort of a buff or to deal any sort of, like, damage. But, like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm y'all heard it. Before we started, by the way, everybody, like, when I was talking to Drew pre-show, I was just like, Drew, bro, I know, we're both a little frustrated with PvP. I was talking about it on Twitter today. I'm just like, look, I might be a little frustrated, people. My bad. Let me just calm down a little bit. I don't want this to turn into a Tony quick draw situation for folks that were around on Twitter when I was just angsty. So we try to keep that tone. The weapons team is talked about previously. No free meals, right? Merc and Chris have utilized that phrase, and people can allude to what I mean by that. It's just somebody tosses up a barricade, and that's just 45 extra hit points, right? For them instantly and the rest of their team. Somebody dodges with Mask of Bakris, even though Mask of Bakris is one of the more, I would argue that Mask of Bakris is maybe one of the most powerful exotics in the game, especially for 1v1s. I don't know a better 1v1 exotic than Mask of Bakris, by the way. Yep. But on the flip side, it is crazy balanced. Yeah, crazy balance, which is why, exactly. You cannot get across. You cannot move past that lockout because there's no mod, nothing that you can do. It's just straight up your dodge does not start its cooldown, regen until that 10 seconds, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy balance. I love it. It's the perfect trade-off. And so now we're getting kind of like a free meal with the 6% weapon bonus damage. That's good. There's something's going. I'd have to literally type in d2foundry.gg, CAD's website. I'd have to type in is arc, and something's going to pop up there where I'm just like, oh, this is going to be a problem.
Oh, I know which weapon. Which one is it? The new high impact pulse. The Neo Muno one is arc, isn't it? Yeah, that's gonna be scary. And that's got like I don't know. I'm maybe I'm the only person on this game that uses it like this. But that's got enhanced hipfire grip on it, so I can kind of make it like pseudo BR. But yeah, that is that's probably probably makes the 2 burst a lot more consistent, which is seems pretty strong. So
I love the way that Drew just said it, which like seems kind of strong, but
seems pretty strong,
The master of the understatement. Cool. Well, that's super interesting. Oh, side question. Yep. A weapon in your vault that you're excited about in season 22. When the zoom changes come through, that gets normalized. So Cammy, right? He put up that post on Twitter where he was just like, man, look at this weapon. I'm excited about these right here once the changes come through. What is a weapon in your vault currently right now, especially if it's something that you love and your community has seen you use quite a bit in the past, but maybe it got stat crept because power creep of to the degree of something like a pound drone with rangefinder. We all know how that like power crept pretty much like every hand cannon on the board at that time. What weapon in your vault are you most excited about coming back around to that you'll actually be able to use because it'll be viable after these season 22 changes?
I'm gonna give like a really boring answer and then like a little bit of a better answer. The boring answer is the BR because they're gonna change it back to 20 zoom.
That's boring. Keep it moving. What's the next
one? Yeah, that was the one that was like, all right, like of course it's that, right?
This man is in love with this gun.
I mean, they changed it. Like I was so like distraught. I'm like you changed it from like it was supposed to match the OG. Like that's why I had the 20 zoom. It match the OG from like Halo. So I'm glad that that's returning to normalcy. We can, be happy about that. But I'm really interested to a throwback, which is I don't know, like I haven't like gone through like too many weapons. I've seen some people say Cold Denial, which is like a pretty good pick. That's an interesting one. Like some weapons that have like a lower zoom, but will inherit a higher base functionality. That seems kind of neat. So like Cold Denial would be one of those. But I would say, I guess one of those weapons would be like, depending on what they do with snipers, if snipers are being affected by this, I guess. I'm not sure, but Twilight Oath is an old favorite of mine that's got 35 zoom. That like, I don't know how they're standardizing or if snipers even fall into this, but that would be like my low zoom pick if that's being scaled in some way. But again, I'm not even sure, so yeah.
Gotcha. Did you ever end up picking up, I know for a long time you were farming the curated Twilight Oath. Did you end up picking it up at any point in time?
Yep. I did. And then I ended up getting a whatever it's called, post sunsetting one. That was like I would say like pretty perfect, like 5 out of 5. So I was really happy about that. I haven't used it much, or I haven't sniped as much, to be honest. Once upon a time I loved that sniper, and I still do. But the mecha sniper now, ever since I started using that somewhat recently, it's just been like my love. I love that mecha sniper so much.
Now, I'm telling you, Destiny does gunplay well, man. They do. They make this stuff feel good.
Oh,
they make this stuff feel good. So
they're the
very cool.
masters.
Yep, they really, really are. It's crazy. All right, let's see. Next question. Man, do I want to do this one right now? Hold on. Let me just scroll forward for a second. Okay. No. This is kind of a related one.
Okay.
This is with what seems to be a focus on arc weapons and the exotic tuning changes arriving next week, along with the rise of 120 RPM hand cannons in usage stats. Do you think the previously announced new hand cannon next season will finally be the coming of the arc 120 RPM hand cannon?
I want to say yes, right? Like, I hope. I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell, but like, we don't have one, right?
We're speculating. We don't have one. Yeah.
Like, we don't have one.
Everybody's
like,
been asking for it for a while. Yeah.
A better time as ever. Like a good time as ever. For one. So yeah.
And it kind of looks like Sturm. Like the gun model, it kind of looks like Sturm, which is
I love that gun model. That gun model's sick.
It's so good, and the ornaments for Sturm too. That weapon is so underrated. Like, seriously. Oh, that's a good example. That is like the Mida of 120 hand cannons. By the way, everybody, like Sturm is literally the Mida, the vigilance wing of 120 hand cannons. It's just like, if you guys. But I heard that people are having problems getting the catalyst, because the catalyst does matter. You get a chunk of range and damage. So, but if you guys have the catalyst, like that gun is a dream, especially if you're into 120 hand cannons, or even just, starting to kind of like dip your toes into it a little bit. Highly recommend you go check it out. Cool. Sprucey11 from Twitter says, I know Lego loves offhand strike on fusions because of the changes it manifests in aim assist and accuracy cones. I'd love to hear from Drew which other weapons outside of fusions also benefit greatly from offhand strike perk. Any he would recommend for fun.
Honestly, I haven't used this perk enough. I think it's a really cool perk, and it's interesting that like it kind of like transforms the weapon into like a hip fire beast after you get like a kill, obviously. I think on special weapons it seems to be so potent because it really just pushes out like some of their crazy effectiveness. The one that I've been using mainly is, I think what is it called? Is it the Iron Banner one? Is that Jorum's Claw? I use it with Kill Clip and Offhand Strike, and it's pretty fun. Yes. It reminds me of like a mini battler when I get that going, except it's got the Skulking Wolf perk on it. Or Suros Synergy, two like my favorite origin traits. So like I like using it for that reason.
I don't think Drew is allowed to say, like, I don't think you're allowed to reference the VXR anymore, man.
I know, right? I'll have to move on to Not Forgotten. That's my other like weapon that I can just talk about for hours.
Love it. Cool. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. Get this out of the way.
Let's do it.
Next season, Stompies. The Hunter movement speed boots, right? They're getting their jump, slide, and sprint speed buffs tied exclusively and only to full dodge energy. So players with Stompies equipped next season, like literally next week, will not receive the buffs for jump, slide, and sprint when their dodge is on a cooldown. So the minus 50 AE nerf for wearing them that occurred like last year barely put a dent in its usage stats. Is it time for Stompies to be sunset? Does this change a core identity of the Hunter class in PvP? And how will this change the balance between the classes in PvP?
I think that as far as Stompies, so I kind of like talked about Stompies like a really long time ago, and like I do think like I'm of the opinion that they needed a nerf, and the reason for that was that I believe that this exotic gave it was both a higher floor and a higher ceiling, and there was no cost or any sort of uptime related to it. It's absolute uptime. It's always available in every engagement, and again, I think that it took a worse player and made them a better player, and took good players and just made their ceiling that much higher. And like you take a god player, some of the best in the game, and they'd become that much better, in my opinion. Like I think it was just a plus on both. So the thing is though, with Stompies, a lot of criticism, to me at least, is that a lot of people say like, oh well, Wormhusk exists, and like Youngaheim Kara Spine, and like whatever, name other Hunter exotic here. the way that I always saw it is that that was never something that was mutually exclusive to me. A lot of my discontent with the game at the moment happens to just be with a lot of exotic armor right now. And to me, it's not like I'm never gonna I can't in good faith argue like, nerf stompies with like, but young Ahamkara spine is a-okay. Like, no, that's just not it for me. So I just think that like it was just I don't know, I just commented on stompies as I would any other exotic I feel that I felt did a little too much. I think that the devs provided some really good insight. I really like the way they phrased it, not the controller part. I don't think that part needed to be there in my opinion at least. But they said some really, if you read past that, they said some really good stuff. Like they focus on trying to make it a tool for entry or escape, not both. And I really like that. Did they deliver on that with the change? I mean, I'm gonna always be open-minded and say let's try it and give it a shot. But to me, it feels like the change was like kind of heavy-handed. Because again, my original argument was like, hey, look at like dunes and look at transversives. They both get persistent slide and sprint speed, which is great. And then
same uptime we're talking about.
They have this other functionality that is a little bit more niche. It's powerful, but it's not always active. Like there's like it's not like always persistently there. So there's an what I like to say, there's an opportunity cost to it. It isn't always persistently available and applicable. And Stompies, of course, did because it has the jump. And that was the kind of like a foundation of my complaints with it. So I thought like maybe a subtle change would be good. But now what we have is something that it's kind of fallen in the reverse order where it's like now it loses. It actually just doesn't have as much as the other two. So maybe if like just the jump was tied to it, maybe it'd be a little bit better. So in that regard, I think that it's I feel it's a bit heavy-handed. And then in regards to I know they did mention there's more exotic changes coming, so we'll have to wait and see. But I think compared to some of the other changes that were made, while I know some folks really don't like the change, and I respect that. While I don't I guess absolutely hate the change, I think that it's hard, like in a vacuum, I could say, okay, I don't hate this. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. But like compared to the other changes I see out of exotics, like no backup plans, or I don't know, like Eternal Warrior, or even Backrus gaining a damage buff, I'm like, I don't feel this is in the same realm or like the same balance philosophy, or it doesn't feel consistent is what I'll say. So I don't know, like as far as like does it change the core identity of the hunter class, I'm not sure. There's a lot of really high skill players. I know you yourself, Tony, and like a lot of high skill players mentioned that like hunter's too slow without it. Their jump is too slow, and like I think the game plays really differently in those settings than in like little like a bit more average games. So like I don't know, I can't really comment on that as much, but will it change the identity? I don't know, I'm not sure. There's a part of me that's inclined to think that people are still going to use it, but I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me personally is, man, it's like all that. You alluded to some of it you were pretty explicit about. I think it was like very heavy-handed. I think that I agree. It doesn't, like, the design philosophy, you could tell it's a little off versus the other changes that were happening. You could tell that there was something particularly out for Stompies, to take them out. Maybe, we could chalk it up to, hey, we need to shift this meta. The usage stats for this exotic have been, high or number one since nearly day one. And we just want to change things up. I agree. And I've said this. I think that you said one thing. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think that the reasoning was flawed, and it kind of stuck out to me a little bit. The fact that they were talking about the jump, but yet, the slide and the sprint weren't as relevant to that argument, especially if you take into account the fact that you got transversives that keep that constant uptime for the speed, the sprint, and the slide, along with Doonies as well. And so it kind of throws it out of balance versus other speed boots with that kind of heavy-handed nerf to it. I've long talked about the fun of using Stompies as well, and how good it made the movement on Hunter feel. Bungie's also talked about, this is something that you didn't mention, but I'm sure you've referenced it before, and Bungie's referenced it themselves as well. And I'm glad that they acknowledged it when they did, the fact that when they introduced airborne effectiveness as a stat, it ended up becoming very jarring, right? How your weapon performed and the gunplay on the ground versus if you even just hit a pebble, right? If you were standing on stairs sometimes. But, to simplify the example, whether you were on the ground or whether you were in the air trying to exercise an engagement. And I feel the same way about the Stompies change. And that's the reason why I won't use Stompies afterwards, is I value consistency, right? Both in my movement and my gunplay, like most improvement focused, maybe competitive, a little bit more competitive focused players do. And so for me to have those benefits, I already know how it feels to move around on a Hunter without Stompies. And I know it's going to be jarring. I dodge and I lose all of that, right? But it's in a pressure situation. Oftentimes we dodge around an enemy, right? And it's in a pressure situation. We're trying to evade, and I do see the reasoning behind, you can either evade or you can utilize the benefits of Stompies, right? The way that they are today. You can choose one or the other, and you have to wait until your dodge cools down in order to use the Stompies benefits again after next week. But it's just so jarring of a change to the movement. It just, I know it's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel good, and I won't use it because of that. And also, I don't feel like it'll be the most competitive because of that as well, simply because in the moment you're going to have to account for, some significant movement changes that will likely alter the flow of that engagement. Just think about a very simple example would be, I know we've all gotten slide lock sometimes, right? Where you press the slide. Somebody put that video up, and I was talking about it a while before that, but obviously it wasn't like a new concept. A lot of us knew that after like the 10th or 11th slide, you'd get slide locked. I don't know if that bug still exists. I don't know the origin. I don't know. It's not like I do it all the time to see if it's always consistent. But I've definitely done it in private match settings, or when I was trying to show it to a friend, like, on Savathun's Throne World or something like that, where I would slide 11 times and it would consistently slide lock me on the 12th. So we all know how jarring that is when we're in an engagement and we're just like, we land on the ground and then we get slide locked, and then a Titan just runs up to us and shotguns us. But, if we would have been able to slide right there, right, if we would have had that movement, then we would have slid into them earlier, and we would have shotgunned them, and we would have gotten that movement off correctly. So I just foresee that, that inconsistency after that dodge is just going to throw me off. I won't be able to use them anymore. And
for me, it's like, I use them as I often call them the best invis exotic, because ever since invis got changed, where you ping the radar, you have to, in order to flank, you need to take advantage of all the time you have off the radar. So the combination of the sprint and slide speed changes would like help get you to the fastest point possible to have the most time being off the radar. And sliding was actually a really big part of that, because again, like the momentum and propelling you and like being able to like get the most out of your time is really important. So Stompies were the best. Now, like post change, it's like they're like unusable because I have to dodge to get my invis. There are some people, like Cam's like, you know what, I'm just gonna use the smoke bomb for my invis and say screw the dodge. I'm like, okay, that's sure, like that's cool. But for me, it's like no, but the smoke bomb's an entirely different dimension of my play. I need that to like to decoy people, like so. Yeah. I mean. So for me, it's unusable.
You get maximum utility out of utilizing them both, individually.
Exactly. And like, what this change makes me think of is like way back when, and some people, I'm gonna say most people might not know this. Listening, I know you know this, but way back when, Stompies in year 1 used to not be as significant forward momentum on control jump. It used to still provide benefit, but wasn't as strong as it is now. And what it used to provide crazy benefit was more for triple jump, and then especially high jump. High jump used to like send you
go
flying.
crazy. Yeah, I remember the sidearm like high jumpers, man. That was that was rough.
It was funny, but like it was crazy because I think that a lot of like top tier players at the time that played Hunter would still like use them, and I don't know. There's a part of me that feels like, I don't know if this is the correct thing or not, but in my mind, I'm like, man, like I feel like even something like that, just like kind of reverting them to that state, if anything, so that it's still consistent, it still gives you some benefit, but maybe, not as crazy. Maybe that would be it. I'm not sure. I don't know, but it's something I often think about.
Fair enough. I guess we'll see what ends up happening with them. There's always a chance. I mean, this is another rework. Obviously, it was a smaller, quote unquote, rework before, just giving it that minus 50 AE. Pretty significant change in the initial airborne effectiveness meta, but I mean, there's always a chance that they could just rework it later on to not make it as much of a jarring or heavy-handed nerf. We'll see. So, all right. I've long said, and I've admired how accessible, speaking of movement, and abundant the movement tech is in Destiny 2 versus other PvP games. Most folks can see it and understand how to incorporate it into their own gameplay loop, even if there is practice to be done to become proficient with it. Where do you see the movement skill gap in Destiny 2 falling, where it would remain accessible to the overwhelming majority of PvP population across all skill gaps, relatively speaking, while not becoming a detriment to lower skill levels, yet continuing to provide a rewarding ceiling for higher skill players? Are we there yet? Do we need more movement or less?
This is a tough question. I think movement in Destiny is one of the many things that they do really well at making feel really good and really fun.
Agreed.
Honestly, like, I think most people can pick this out about me. I'm not one of the movement people. I'm not a movement person. I think Destiny has definitely made me appreciate it more, but I'm like not like a super movement gamer in FPS games. I'm very like Halo's a game with like, it's like the OG Halo games, you walk, right? Like it's like there's no, it's just like you walk and shoot. There's no real movement at all, pretty much. So I like old COD games where like, I don't know, Black Ops 2 was like my favorite, where a lot of it's just like kind of like the extent of it was just, I guess, drop shotting, if that, or like jump shotting. So me personally, I like minimal movement, but I think that there's definitely a skill to it. I think there's definitely something that's like rewarding about it, and that feels really good about it. I'm not sure how that plays across different skill levels, but I think that it is a part of Destiny 2. My attitude on it with Destiny 2 is like, I think that it should persist to exist because it's really fun. Like you look at Strand, like Strand's a class to me that is in part fun because I've never been a grapple person. Like I'm not I'm not into grapples in games. I don't really get it. I'm not a whole cracked movement person. It's just not me. But like using it, I'm like, man, this feels good. Like they just know how to make things feel really good and fun.
They really do.
Like again, I'm not a movement person. Okay, Destiny turned me on to a little bit of that. I'm not a grapple person. Okay, Destiny, made me feel like really good about using it. So I love that they can do that, and I think that they should continue to obviously embrace that. And I'm not sure how that translates. I'm sure it's difficult to balance for different skill levels. Blink is another one that came up on the podcast that I adore that movement. Again, I'm sure it's not easy to balance for different skill levels. But I definitely think it's a skill thing that different players can learn and see what they gravitate towards. Now, for me, I think that what I feel about movement's a fine line, because sometimes if you put too much into movement, it devalues positioning, and it means that when you can escape too easily, or like when you can engage too quickly, things can become unreadable, and things can and it can just devalue positioning. So I think there's a really fine line there. And for me, like I'm always been like just like I'm a positioning guy, team shot guy, like old Halo boomer stuff. I'm getting to that age. I'm all I do is run around with my gun from like 10 years ago. So like I guess we're there. But seriously though, for me, that's why I gravitate towards, I think, like the abilities that I'm like that allow, like, takes, how do I say this? I think Destiny naturally gravitates towards that kind of movement. It shows you and like leads you to engagements, and you want to convert on them, right? And you want to find ways to be lethal and to convert on those engagements quickly and like kind of like what's the word? Not steamroll, but like snowball. You want to like really snowball with it. And I think that's naturally what the game lends to, and it could be very fast when that happens. I think that I like that, and I'm okay. Like I think it's great that exists. And for me, like I think the antithesis, I guess, to that is abilities that make that like common, I guess, that desire to like engage and convert on engagements and like be really fast and like hit hard.
That incentivize it.
Yeah, like I think for me it's like I like the abilities that like that kind of like I wouldn't want that to be nerfed in of itself, and instead have more tools that give me the opportunity to make people second guess that. Like I talk about the smoke bomb, the decoy, stasis in a little bit. I mean, definitely not stasis on launch, but slow. Like the hunter shurikens are kind of like a way to do that. I like that Destiny can go so crazy on different ends of the spectrum as tools to use for what you gravitate towards. So again, I don't know how that plays out with skill levels. I don't envy the job of having to balance it for that, but I think that I would rather have that exist, but have tools at both ends of the spectrum that create depth as a result. Like you have to respect both type of a thing, and players on one end of the spectrum have to respect players on the other end, or like playing in that way. And I think that creates some really interesting dynamics. So that's my opinion on that, I guess.
Jesus, man. That was like the best answer yet, bro. I have my video up, everybody, and I'm just sitting here, and I never stop shaking my head like yes. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just okay, yeah. Oh man, you right. Oh man, that's a great way to put that. Oh boy. Okay. All right. I don't think we can really expand on anything more than that, man. That was great. Thank you. It's all about that balance, right? So much of what you said is an identity of Destiny 2. I always personally feel like there should be a slight imbalance only slight imbalance in favor of aggression, because when we see too much heal nades, overshields, free for an instant for the entire team and stuff like that, it just gets a little too in favor of passivity, and maybe that's paired with some of the evasive movement that we have, and maybe some of that's slowly coming back in line with the changes to shoulder charge. Maybe, with some of these small buffs to some of our roaming supers, maybe that'll be helpful. I know it's a balance. I don't envy, just like you said, I don't envy the job of devs to find that balance. I do agree that there should be tools for these different play styles. I always said Destiny's for everyone. I hope that's always the case. And that includes folks that play a little slower and more intentional. There's nothing wrong with that play style. There's nothing less valid about that play style. It can be just as effective when tools are in place that allow you to double down on a play style that you enjoy. I don't envy the job of folks that have to balance those two to ensure that metas don't snowball one way or the other, right? And so that it can be rewarding for the largest group of people. Interesting. Cool. I just said all that, everybody, but Drew just said it better like about 5 minutes ago, so we chilling. All right. Next, no backup plans. The Titan Gauntlet exotic is getting reworked next season, yielding increased shotgun damage when players have a Void Overshield, while shotgun final blows end up refreshing that overshield. This is kind of, do you think Sheik will use any other exotic than no backup plans? And is this the resurgence of the Destiny Fun Police? Also, will this incentivize Titan players as a whole to return to their unabashed W key warrior ways?
That exotic change really scares me. Like that one.
It's crazy. Sheik is eating.
Oh yeah. I almost want to say there's a part of me that's gonna be like a little disappointed if I see him using anything but that. Like this has got to be his time, right? This is it.
This is him.
Yeah, this is it. Him. Like yeah, like this is the one, right? So I know like Antaeus words are a little crazy, but like I mean this one, like who cares about Antaeus? Like he's got to use this.
He's got to.
Yeah, this change though, it's like I was wondering, like, I need to understand this about this exotic. If I have a Void Overshield from any source, is my shotgun just now doing more damage?
Yeah, it is, Drewsky.
Yeah, but I guess we're gonna have to see how much more damage. But like, then putting up a Bastion barricade, or like you can use like Echo of Vigilance, like you stack all the sources.
Yeah, I'm about to mention that in a second.
Go crazy, like, dude, like, yeah. I mean, like, in all, like, it sounds crazy, surely. And we're gonna have to see how much more shotgun damage it really is in PvP, because like for all we know maybe it could be like pretty minuscule, or like and not be like that crazy of a damage buff.
I don't know if I remember correctly. They said it wasn't gonna stack with. I'm gonna double check here. I can do it while I'm saying this. I think they said that it wasn't going to stack with Surge mods because it was going to end up being, hold on, let me just see. It was going to end up being more. Hold on, let me just double check. Maybe that was another one then.
Are they applying that to this? They have like this whole like consistent methodology of like in the recent change, which is actually like a good part of the new changes, like 6% damage buff, which is higher than 3 surges, but won't stack with 3 surges as a result.
That's right. Yeah. So actually, that was Bakris, by the way, people. That was Bakris. They didn't mention how much that additional like damage buff is going to be for no backup plans. But honestly, I suspect that it probably would be in line.
I hope
it would probably be in line with Bakris. I would hope so too, because they're doing a really, really good job, just like you said, and a really consistent job of trying to normalize that across the board. Outside of, I gotta say this, outside of the absolute massacre that they did to my boy Path of Burning Steps. What are we doing? Ain't nobody using that but me, bro. Why did you just massacre my boy like that? I was 2-tapping with Rampage ×1 again, but I had to like build into that a little bit, hit my shots, and it was luck because, there's only a chance that it could activate off of the first kill, and then increasingly those chances go up between the second and third kill. Now, boy, I'm glad, I guess, that we ended up getting the balancing act so one of the functionalities of Path of Burning Steps, it's a Titan exotic for folks that don't realize it. It's a Titan exotic whereby if you get a kill via any solar source, that means a weapon or your abilities, it has a chance of activating tiered buffs. I think it's Firewalker is the name of the buff. It's Firewalker. I think it might go up to 4 or 5, which is crazy. I guess I'm in gunfights, so I don't really notice what mine is going up to. But if I'm using a 120 hand cannon with Rampage currently stacks with that Firewalker buff, and therefore I end up being able to 2-tap. I've talked about this before, this Firewalker build actually a while back on a few episodes back. I can end up 2-tapping again with a 120 like I was able to do during 120 meta back in the day at Rampage ×1. So you end up taking out the first person with a 3-tap, and then you're 2-tapping, ideally. If you didn't end up getting Firewalker on the first kill, as long as you're alive and didn't die, you end up getting another kill, another final blow from another solar source, either your hand cannon or your solar weapon. I see a lot of people using it with Vex Mythoclast as well. Then you get an, again, escalating chance of that Firewalker buff activating, and then you're just going zoomy with it. So yeah, I was kind of disappointed with that. The fact that it was kind of bringing the highs down, because that was a very rewarding gameplay loop. But in general, I am just like you said, I'm happy that they're bringing some consistency to our damage buffs and what stacks and what doesn't stack. I feel like, man, the mod system and these changes as a whole kind of got slammed, and I didn't think it deserved it. People were talking about, man, the mod system is refreshing, but it doesn't have the depth of the, Charged with Light, Warmind cells, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like, well, of course. I mean, that's like stacked on stacked on stacked systems that we got each year for the last several years that, it's just like, this is a 1.0 mod system, and it's the same with this right here. But based on doing this show with Lego, we're always talking about what stacks, what doesn't stack, what's an empowering buff, what's a debuff, how those end up playing together. It's really interesting. There's more depth. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's more depth to it than folks think. But yeah. Interesting, and I do hope that at the very least this will incentivize our Titans to return to their W key warrior ways. I'm not saying push into me on some dumb stuff, people. I'm just saying, please stop putting up your barricades with overshields and dancing behind it just to annoy me. I'd like to get into this fight now, please.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see. I really do hope it's like something a little bit more subtle. Like I think 6% is like definitely a much more tempered damage buff than we've seen in the past for a lot of things. So I think that if this is like a 6% boost as well, that'd probably be pretty okay. I mean, there's something to be said about the fact that like you're getting an increased damage buff while having an overshield, which means the differential of like health in total between what you're dealing to them versus like you already have more health and you're dealing more damage, that differential grows larger.
Yeah.
So, like, that would be my biggest concern with this exotic, which is, like, what I don't like about it. But, like I said, maybe, again, maybe there will be a little bit more risk than not in, people having to try and commit to their shotgun. We'll see.
You say that, Drew, but I'm about to break it down for you. So you said, hey, I'm concerned, Tony. I'm concerned. I'm going to turn that concern into a red flag, bro.
Okay.
So 2 things. The first thing is kind of a preface. I believe, I'm not sure about this, maybe you can elaborate on it if you know something more conclusive, but I believe that Echo of Vigilance, the fragment that ends up giving you an overshield on final blows if your shields are broken previous to that final blow, brand new fragment for Void 3.0. I believe it dropped this season at the beginning of the season. I believe that stacks with the overshield that you end up getting from OEM, from One-Eyed Mask on Titan as well, which activates upon a similar condition. And so I'm wondering whether no backup plans, the overshield from no backup plans, because it's an exotic similar to OEM, is going to end up stacking with Echo of Vigilance. So I'm going to break this down. So I just wanted to mention that the overkill synergy, between the no backup plans rework and next season's artifact perks, which I'm going to list all this, I'm going to explain all this, Unto the Breach and Protective Breach, along with Void 3.0 fragment, Echo of Vigilance, that's the overshield fragment, right? The artifacts on Titan, Controlled Demolition, which I'll explain in a second, but it's a debuff, so I'll just mention that. And Bastion, which is the overshield upon casting of your barricade. Plus, you put me onto this a little bit with Spectral. Mods heavy-handed and better already. Again, I'll explain exactly what each of these are in a second. Plus the fact that Titans will be building into 100 strength now, because of the change to shoulder charge. So they're explicitly going to be building into that. And they do have the stat spread to do that because they don't have to build into mobility. So they're just going to take some from the grenade and put it into strength as much as possible. So just to break it down, and you guys can see the link here, I tried to list these in an order where hopefully it'll make sense. But controlled demolition, the aspect on Void 3.0 Titan, hitting a target with a Void ability or volatile detonation will make them volatile. So that's debuffing them as well. When they become volatile, they're debuffed. Bastion is the artifact where casting your barricade generates an overshield for yourself and nearby allies. The two artifact mods that I referenced earlier, Unto the Breach, which this is the artifact that we're getting next season. So this is an artifact mod that's going to come on that artifact, the seasonal artifact. Unto the Breach is defeating Void debuff targets creates a Void Breach while your Void subclass is equipped, right? And I said that controlled demolition, the aspect, ends up debuffing targets whenever you use a charged melee or any Void ability, right? Any Void ability. Protective Breach, which is another mod from that same seasonal artifact next season, picking up that Void Breach gives you an overshield or refreshes your existing overshield. Which overshield at this point? I have no clue. On top of that, you've got the mod Heavy Handed. It drops an orb on melee kill, while Better Already on the boots ends up healing on orb pickup. All this, again, with 100 strength, so folks are going to have that melee, right? Then you've got the Echo of Vigilance, like I said, gives an overshield on final blows if your shields are broken, which is often the case in close quarters. Just for completeness, you have a 5th column artifact next season called Supernova, which describes picking up a Void Breach causes your next source of Void damage to create a large weakening pulse.
Jeez.
A weakening pulse. So we're talking about maybe Retold Tail shotgun, Void, or the new Neptune rapid fire frame shotgun, which is hella slept on because it gets opening shot, Basso Ostinato, or even Tractor Cannon. You get all of that and all synergizes. And I don't know, man, it just... Is it going to be like 45 hit points plus 45? Yeah, that's right. Devour off of picking up that orb. Yo, Sheik is eating, bro.
Yeah, that's going to be disgusting. Like, that's definitely going to be nasty. Like, you're going to just be able to, like, once you like, I think, like, kind of, like, it's... Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping that there's, like, a little bit... Like, I know, like, Void Overshields are, 45 health? I don't know if they ever exceed
45.
that. But, like, I think it's 45 health. So I'm hoping that there will be still enough of a delta between, like, two players dealing damage that, like, you'll be able to trade out. Like, I'm hoping that there will be, in an ideal scenario, enough risk so that if you are trying to run through people with a shotgun repeatedly, essentially, that, like, someone can trade out with you. And as a result of that, like, you're not always safe. Like, you'll keep refreshing and be at, like, peak, I guess, after every fight, hypothetically. But if someone can trade out with you enough of the time, maybe that will temper that or have enough risk. Who knows? That's just what I would hope for.
Maybe. I'll also say this right here, right? If you choose to just, I probably shouldn't even mention Bastion because maybe let's just say that's more of a passive pick as far as the artifact. If you wanted to continue to double down on Void 3.0 on this push with the shotgun, then you would run offensive bulwark maybe. So while you have an overshield, right, from no backup plans, that means that you have increased melee damage. It just sounds disgusting.
Yep, it's gonna be frightening. I'm terrified of that exotic.
Cool. All right. Next up. Sheik, you eating, bro. You eating. Is there a reworked exotic coming next season that will make you stop egregiously neglecting your Titan or Warlock in PvP? If so, what type of build are you cooking up?
Well, Warlock, I recently started playing, and I finally have builds on my Warlock that I can say that, like, I feel confident in playing, which is the Blink lock. I love Void Warlock with Blink. With Astrocyte, it's like everything I wish Hunter had on Blink, but it doesn't, so I have to play Warlock. So no, we're chilling there. Titan, I don't know, like, there's just, like, I hate to be that guy. I love, like, Striker Titan. It's like, the reason I would play Titan is for the thruster. Like, I know the barricade's so strong, but like, I was for so long, like, I feel like I had a lot of streams where like people would always say like, we need Twilight Garrison back, and I'm like, like, we need the air dodge. I'm like, yeah, we already have Icarus. Like, what if Titan's got like a thruster pack? Because so thruster was a thing in Halo 5. That was one of like the new, like, the movement options they added. And I think on Titan you can do it in the air, which kind of sucks, but like in Halo you could do it in the air as well. So a lot of people would have like, it was like a 5-tap with the pistol, and you kind of like have these gunfights where like you're going through your 5-tap, and then you jump one way and then thrust the other way, and I'm like, dude, thruster pack would be so sick. And we kind of got that on Titan, so I like to play it with the Magnum or the Forerunner, and I just love that. But I don't do it right now because I'm not, I think, good enough with it at this point, but also like Striker Titan's just really, really strong, and I'll play it when it's not as much like, when it's not the cool thing, or I don't know, the strong thing.
He's what he's trying to say is he's a hipster, folks.
Exactly.
Hipster,
I'll do it,
that's
when
fair.
it's
that's fair.
When people don't hate playing it or whatever, I'll get into it.
Yeah,
I do love the thruster, so I wouldn't say there's any exotics that like, I don't know, like that have me out of my seat like wanting to play those classes, but that's what I would play if I did. Very
cool. All right. Next question. The Fragile Focus perk is getting reworked next season to activate and to provide the 20 to the range stat of a weapon until your shields are depleted. And the buff returns once shields are fully regenerated. So that's the buff that's happening next season. Especially with the zoom and rangefinder changes coming in season 22, is there one particular weapon you immediately thought of benefiting you with this perk, that this perk comes on once the changes arrive? Also, what do you think will be the best range enhancing perk once rangefinder no longer yields additional range? So a range enhancing perk. My guess off the top of my head would still be opening shot, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm inclined to say opening shot. Like, opening shot's just such a consistent, like, good perk. Like, it's got so much value. Like, the fact that like the accuracy starts, it starts more accurate, so that also affects the shots that come after it, because your first shot is starting at a higher accuracy point, so everything that follows up until a certain point is more accurate. So it's suffering from less bloom as quick, which is just insane. And then on top of it, like, your first shot's getting more range. Like, I think like opening shot is just like, to me, a no-brainer. I think Fragile Focus though is like really interesting too. I think that might be like one of the best ones as well, honestly. I've always thought this perk was good. Like, I like that perk. I know not everyone loves it. And I think it's good.
What you talking about, Drew?
Oh, Fragile Focus.
No.
You've been using it.
Really, you think it's good? You think it's good right now?
Yeah, I thought it was like decent. I don't know. You know why? It's because I'm like so biased. Because I'm like, when I play Invis, half the time I'm getting my first shot anyway. So I'm like, oh, what do you guys mean? Like,
that's true.
I'm getting all the value out of this, like. So like, I don't know. Like, I always thought that in practice, like, or in theory, the perk would be good, and I always liked that synergy with Invis. I think in practice, it's probably not amazing. So I'm glad it's getting a buff. The weapon that I think of using it on is I have a Hero's Burden with Fragile Focus on it, that I really, really like. So that's and I always want that SMG to be good, and it just definitely isn't right now. It's just definitely not. But like, I really want that gun to be good, so I'm hoping that this will help it.
Fair. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. And it's crazy what happened to Hero's Burden, right? Because still, my favorite SMG in the game still is the OG Hero's Burden, because I have something like 17 zoom on it with whatever sight I have on it.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And I have snapshot and I have kill clip on it. That thing goes crazy, and I don't even pull it out. And I need to probably do that more, just because everybody be like, what is this gun you're just drilling me with? 900 RPM. Oh, man, crazy. So, okay. All right. I can definitely get down with that with regards to Hero's Burden, Fragile Focus as well, because I'm pretty sure I have, I guess once that perk gets reworked next season, once it drops, I suppose it might qualify as a god roll just because it's max range with some good stability on it as well.
Yeah.
From the new Hero's Burden. So cool. Next question, with what seems to be... Oh, we already answered that. That's fantastic. Next question is, did the return of connection-based matchmaking in Guardian games make you feel some sort of way about a return to largely skill-based matchmaking casual play next week? Or did it, did it change how you enjoyed PvP as a whole? If so, why?
I think that, like... I have enjoyed it. I would be lying if I said it wasn't fun. It definitely is fun. I mean, to be honest, it's definitely fun for me to be able to just like do pretty well or decently well without like, I don't know, having to like really like dial in or focus up. And also I think for some people, I think they definitely enjoy not having or feeling forced to use like Immortal or like, you know, something that's like really, really, really competitive, because you will run into it more often. And I think that, yeah, I've noticed I don't like, I mean, Immortal is still as strong as ever, and I definitely don't notice myself running into it nearly as much. So that's been something that I enjoy. Yeah. That being said, though, my stance on SPMM is like, I'm just so indifferent. I'm like, I really am at the point where it's like, I hope SPMM, as they kind of mentioned on the podcast the other day or last night, I do hope that it's more of an opportunity for them to identify more problems or like things in different skill brackets and like be more in touch with that and tackle those. So I hope that provides them with that opportunity, and I think it does, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, as far as SPMM, I kind of said it in the past that I'm like, look, at this point, I definitely, if I'm playing an SPMM like lobby or whatever and Immortal's going crazy, I'm just at the point where like I don't get mad at the SPMM, I get mad at the Immortal, or like I get mad at the balancing. And
yeah, I would agree.
I'm just like, to me, it's been a discussion that's gone on for like so long that I'm just at the point where it's like I'll hang no matter what. I don't mind having to apply myself and like dial in and having like some challenging games. I love the challenge. Like I understand, I totally respect that some people want to just like kind of like chill out and hang out. To me, I definitely don't turn away from the challenge. The challenge like really helps me zone in and like get into that flow state. So I love it.
Yeah, same.
You know, like I love that so much, so I'm not opposed to SPMM in that way, and like there's enjoyment out of that for it, but I enjoy things on the other side too, of, you know, like kind of like just relaxing and doing whatever, and like you know pub stomping a little bit here and there, you know.
The way I see it is expressing that skill, and being, you know, it's just like I don't think that people should, be ashamed of where they are skill-wise, whether it be less experience. I like to say experience because so much of Destiny's skill is really based on how much time you have on the game, and you understand the mechanics and, you know, the build crafting, and the weapons that you enjoy and that synergize with the play styles that you enjoy as well. That's the way that I see it. Is it's just like I don't care about pub stomping per se. I just care about being able to express in that similar vein. I just care about being able to, in some corner of Destiny, have the experience and the intention that I have behind my playstyle, my build, the shots that I take, the shots that I don't take, the positions that I take, both individually and a team. The intention behind that, I want to see that matter, and I want to see that, you know, matter in a gameplay loop that is rewarding. And so that's the way that I see it. I could care less whether I go, 24-24 in some games, or, or 40 and 5 and in others. It's more about those individual engagements, and then the next one after that, just like you said, that flow state, of just challenging yourself, because I'll always find a challenge. For me personally, I don't really sit back, whether it be connection based or otherwise. Like I'm nearly always 90% on my gameplay,
Yep.
And so for me, it's whether it's, less experienced opponents or more experienced opponents, what's rewarding to me is, man, that engagement right there, and then immediately getting my shields back and moving on to the next one, choosing a good position, choosing a good engagement distance in order to maximize my effectiveness with my playstyle, my kit, my weapons, and then just moving and moving and moving. And sometimes being in that situation where it's overwhelming and then utilizing all of that stuff that I just said, but just faster and more accurate. It's a concept. I don't know if I coined it or not, but accurately aggressive. And I tell people all the time that once you get to a certain point, I know you'd agree, once you get to a certain point in Destiny with the experience and the gunplay and your accuracy and stuff like that, it's not really about learning too much more beyond that. It's really just about doing exactly what you're doing, but faster. That's all. Yeah. And if you can do that, once you do that, you'll just be able to play at higher, consistently at higher and higher tiers. That's all it is. So, yeah, I mean, I'll definitely say that I'm grateful for the fun that I've been able to have playing a little bit more casually, but, not so much for me. I don't really play casually so much, but definitely a little more casually than I've had in a long time, being able to play with a variety of different viewers, with a variety of different weapons. I would otherwise would never be able to use in skill-based matchmaking. So definitely kudos, and thank you to Bungie. I hope there will always, be a place where I'm able to do so. And the thing that I always say about skill-based matchmaking in particular is I'm not like you. I'm kind of indifferent as long as the game works as intended. I know that the intention is to have some variety, whether it be skill-based matchmaking at the highest level or not. The intention is, I don't think Bungie wants the entire lobby to be sitting back with the most strong, like literally you only see like 2 or 3 different weapons and 2 or 3 different builds. I know Bungie doesn't intend at that, at that in casual play at even the highest levels of skill-based matchmaking, right? So, and also connections being a part of that as well to a degree. Those are the things that bother me the most about skill-based matchmaking. It's never been about playing the best players or playing players that are at my skill level. I don't care about that. I don't care if it's harder in that sense. I just want to have rewarding gameplay with the integrity that Bungie intends, and that folks get in other skill-based matchmaking brackets. So even if casual play is just completely they can't get that to a way that works best for me at wherever I am in that skill bracket, man, as long as there's somewhere in Destiny that's not a private match. Don't get me wrong. I love playing labs with my folks, but I'd like to play pubs too. I'd like to get rewards too. I'd like to maybe finally get that God Roll Crisis Inverted I've been going for like a year and some change. I can't do that in private matches, know. So as long as there's some corner for me, I don't care if I never touch 6v6 again, as long as I'm having the time of my life in a mode that caters towards improvement focused folks like myself, rewarding gameplay, great maps, in comp if that's where it is. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for SBMM, like for me, like I've said, like I'm indifferent because like I can find enjoyment in either version of matchmaking, CBMM, SBMM. I tend to want the challenge more than not, although I understand how that can get really tiring, or like that can have a lot of like fatigue. You can get tired out pretty quickly with that sometimes.
Of
so
course.
like I get that too. But for me, like I said, I said it a long time ago. Whatever gets the most people playing PvP, that's honestly all I give a shit about right now.
You got woo.
Like I don't
Almost
like
cursed.
I don't mean to like almost like I don't know, in a weird like virtue signal that or something. I really do mean it. Like I think that Destiny 2 PvP is really fun. I hope people find more enjoyment with it, and I just want I'd love for more people to play PvP, and the more enjoyment people get out of PvP, hopefully there's more support that can come with that too. So I just really care whatever gets people playing PvP, cool. I'm just along for the ride at this point. And that's really how I feel about it. I am a little bit more, I am empathetic towards the SBMM bit. I do, well, something that like put it into perspective for me was that I do remember and recall, being a more inexperienced player and like, getting completely dunked on, whether it be in like, matchmaking, way back when, or like by my friends. And I remember that did drive me to want to improve and be like, I want to be like them. I want to be better than them. But I do think that, games definitely have changed a long time since then. There's a lot of different people that play games for different reasons. But also, like, I think that, I think the one thing was that, someone once gave me kind of like a metaphor, and like, I kind of thought about this a lot of like, you go to your, community, let's say like, basketball court, and, you want to play, and then LeBron's just there fucking ready. And, it's just like, I empathize with that. I feel like that's a reality for sometimes like players. Like I don't regard myself even as like I'm far from the best in this game, but even I think for some players like, loading into lobby with me, they might, I've had people tell me, they feel like, like that's that kind of pressure, and I'm like, I empathize with that. Like, I'm not trying to say I'm LeBron, like fucking no shot, but you know what I'm saying. Like there's a skill disparity, and there's something called the zone of proximal. What is it? Can't mention it to me. Zone of proximal development, or something like that. Zone of proximal improvement, zone of proximal development, where you have to be within a certain window or like a certain range of skill to really like. Have
discern.
To like have enough there that like you feel like it's possible, so you're challenged and you enter that flow state, but at the same time you will, you might likely lose if let's say if they're better than you, but it's digestible enough that you're not getting completely like destroyed, so that you can see like you can discern like minute improvements for your gameplay or things to improve on, so I empathize with all that. I really do, and that's something that I think a long time ago I just never really understood. So that's one thing I will say. On the opposite end, though, I do think that like, good players are always going to exist. Good and great players will always exist. And I don't think that like I know that not some folks, this is a really bad way of saying this, I think, but I don't, for lack of a better term, like you can't like incubate good players at the same time, or like, separate them at the same time. So I think it goes both ways, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with all that. First of all, second of all, Cammy, like, bro, I'm gonna need you to chill, like, go to sleep, get some rest. You don't need to be like reading journal papers and stuff about this like 24/7, like with all these complicated names, man.
I know, like you really drop some knowledge bombs sometimes. I'm like, man,
he really does. He really does. Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about that concept for a while, because that's kind of the concept between the levels in labs, the community scrims. I tell people all the time, it's just like, look, if you are a 3, 4 is the highest level. If you are a 3, there's a big disparity between most 3s and most 4s. You're not going to learn that much. So, a lot of times, especially if it's somebody that's like a mid 4 or like a high 4, which oftentimes is like a tourney player, they're just going to run over that lobby. And there's like, it's not as if they're trying to. Most times I have awesome folks in there, so nobody's really in there trying to pub stomp or like there's no predators in there, trying to pub stomp. But it's simply that they're at a particular level. You're not going to be able to discern what you need to do to improve to reach that level, or to counter what they're doing. It's just going to be too far out of your reach. So completely agree with that. But I think I completely agree. There's always going to be those strong improvement focused players that are always just trying to hit that ceiling, and they won't stop. It's always about moving forward with them. Or it's a moving backwards to a degree, especially as, the skill is just going to naturally increase across the population over time, as everybody from D1 that is playing D2, all these mechanics are like old, it's just ingrained. We don't even think about it half the time. My point is, as long as there is an expectation, just like I tell my 3s and my 4s, look, you can join 4 lobbies, just have an expectation of what I'm telling you. Like you got to be careful, because there may be some 4s in that lobby where you might not be able to discern. So if you want that pain and you want to take that chance, that's cool. Same thing with, pubs and different playlists As long as I feel like Bungie communicates through the game in particular, because not most people don't read TWABs and stuff like that, that expectation that you're going to face those raid bosses sometimes in this particular mode, right? I completely agree with you that it's to try to incubate every playlist, to try to incubate players from facing those raid boss PvP players is kind of just like a futile effort that at a certain point is just diminishing returns or just ends up hurting the playlist more than it helps. I think it's just more important for folks that maybe play the game a little bit more casually to set expectations appropriately about what certain playlists offer them for rewarding gameplay, the type of rewarding gameplay that they want to engage in.
Yep.
Cool. Let me see. Only a couple more questions. This is a good episode. I hope the questions are to your liking as well. I work pretty hard on them.
Yeah. No. This has been fun. A lot of thoughtful discussion. It's been really enjoyable.
Awesome. Let me see. Speaking of matchmaking, so we got 3 more questions. Speaking of matchmaking, how do you anticipate that you will enjoy the new Dominion capture point mode and matchmaking and additional matchmaking changes coming to Trials of Osiris next season? Do you think it will be an improvement over our legacy elimination mode and card-based matchmaking system seemingly coming to an end? This is what currently exists. Also, do you think we'll see population size benefits coming off of this new system versus what we currently have?
Yeah, I'm overall pretty excited for the trial stuff. I think that firstly with the Dominion capture point mode, I'm very happy that we're it feels like we're evolving in some way. I feel like my favorite version of Trials is 0-1, and that's not as much as I enjoyed a lot of parts of the weapon meta and ability meta. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the game mode structure. So way back when, the way it used to work was it used to alternate countdown and survival every weekend, and it would put countdown and survival, of course, on the maps made for those modes. So you'd never have a map that wasn't made for the mode, and I think that it played pretty nicely as a result.
I would agree.
Then Trials went away for a really long time. They were improving it, and whether that was the case or not, it went away for a very long time, and then it came back and it was kind of just like what it was in D1. And hey, for some folks, if you're into that, that's great. For me, I just feel like that's a lot of years.
Maybe a step backwards.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a formula that's I think that with how much better players have gotten, dude, Destiny's been around for a long time now, and the average player skill is a lot different than what it once was, let's say when the franchise started. And I think that Trials, needs to evolve and move with that. So I'm very just happy to see that there's some sort of a
movement,
of an evolve, and whether they need to do something different with this or whatever. Hey, you know what, that can happen, but I'm just happy to see it evolve, and I think that's a good thing that needed to happen. And I think that I'm a big fan of objective game modes. Personally, I didn't like that in Trials especially. It's just snipers. Snipers are so dominant, especially because they have so much freedom. They have so much space and freedom. And you can argue that but some good players will just still demand command a lobby. I'm fine, let them command a lobby, because I'm willing to bet that those players that are that insane with snipes were doing it anyways. I feel like they're that good. And you know what? I think that the amount of those players is not nearly the amount that are as good as people that are just able to freely kind of sit right now in Trials, because they have there's no pressure to move, there's no pressure to I don't know. I just feel like a lot of the time Trials kind of goes to zone anyways. It's very look for the sniper pick then dive, and I personally just feel I don't love that. So I'm hoping that this will alleviate it. But regardless, I'm really, really excited for the capture point stuff. As far as the card and the different pools and stuff like that, I don't know. I don't fully understand how it's going to work. Although when I read it on initial glance, I'm okay, that sounds cool. And then I was oh, all right, so I'm not maybe as critical as I should be of that. But but I do recall. How does it work again? I recall it's something like if you lose X amount of matches, you're in like a practice pool, right?
Yeah, I think once the card is broken, I believe you're in the practice pool.
Okay.
If it seems like you're farming that practice pool, they end up throwing you back into the challenger pool, which is where folks are playing to go flawless.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
That's my basic understanding of it.
Yeah, to me, it's like it just seems like that's cool. I'm kind of glad that I don't know this. There's not much weight in this opinion right here, but I'm like, I mean, like I think this is better than the flawless pool on like whatever it is on Sunday, and like the population's like kind of divided and people have to are rolling over into the flawless pool as time goes by. I don't know if it actually is or not better, but again, my thing when I read this was like, yeah, that sounds good. So to me the highlight was the capture point stuff, so I'm just kind of open to whatever at this point. And will we see a population size benefit? I mean, I think that's the goal, right? I hope. I hope so. I don't know if we will, and I maybe this will make this feel a little bit more approachable for less experienced players that are trying to get into a little bit of the next tier of like PvP, or just have a little bit more modes that feel approachable, that has some like loot that they want to chase, because I know that's important to people. So like I hope so. That's the goal, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. You guys are always making me think about this stuff in new ways. There's so much destiny, right? There's so much destiny. I can think deeply on one subject, and then there's so many different changes coming through. And bless for that, for sure. Kudos to Bungie. I completely agree. Evolution is just important, and we've been asking for changes for a while. I don't think it is the best look for us to nitpick every change. Basically, we ask for changes. Remember, we used to never get any changes whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see PvP support of some kind. I'm always very happy.
Exactly, 100%. So I guess my point is, I was starting to focus a little bit, maybe too much, on the fact that the practice pool had kind of first of all, I do wonder if this bug that currently is lobby balancing the absolute living crap out of folks that are solo and duo queuing in the challenger pool. I hope that bug gets resolved by next season, because it's like pretty oppressive to try to solo or duo if you are above average to the lighthouse. And I know there's a lot of solo duo folks out there.
Yeah, Cam told me about this briefly. I haven't played Trials in a minute, but he mentioned this, and I was like,
Yeah, that leaves me with pause, because the last two test weekends that we've had, that bug existed, and I don't know if we've heard anything from Bungie, any comms on whether that is going to, stay, whether that's still going to be there during the first Trials weekend. So that leaves me with a little bit of pause, but I'm trying to stay optimistic about it. The fact that they actually said it was a bug, right, and that it wasn't a feature.
Yeah.
So that's one side of it. The other side of it that you kind of made me think a little bit more differently about is, I was just like, you guys said in comms that there wasn't going to be skill-based matchmaking in Trials, once we abolish the card system. But yet it seems like there's some nitty gritty, like nuanced stuff in the practice pool in particular. I feel like where there seemed like there was some broad skill based matchmaking. Like if you just some broad application of the term of some skill based matchmaking in there. And I think it's, don't quote me on it, this is honestly, these pools are a little complicated, and I'm always trying to wrap my head a little bit more about them, especially since I don't think I've played any of the two test weekends either. So that's another thing. There hasn't been anything map wise or loot wise, which I'm just like, man, I got to get in there. But I guess what I'm trying to say, the perspective that I recognize is, I'm just like, well, if the skill-based matchmaking is in the practice pool, I'm not going to be in there anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we're going to be in the practice pool, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm okay if there's
I'm always going for flawless.
Cool, dude.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I literally just thought, I was just like, because that's what I mean by trying to not nitpick everything, because sometimes I fall into that trap where it's just like, oh, the comms said there's no skill-based matchmaking, but yet it seems like there's skill-based matchmaking, even if there's quote-unquote loose skill-based matchmaking in the practice pool. But then I think about it and I'm just like, well, okay, I'll give a little bit of grace for the comms. I'm not going to be in the practice pool anyway. Like, why would I play? I don't need that practice in trials at my skill level, at my experience. Yeah, so it wouldn't affect me, and therefore it would benefit the folks who are truly trying to get practice, right? And just like you said, it makes the playlist more approachable. So, step back sometimes. Sometimes you got to step back and just get that additional perspective. So respect. But I do hope that bug gets addressed and we get some more information on what's going on with that. And people will have a more balanced time trying to, get to the lighthouse as a solo or a duo in the challenger pool.
Yeah.
Last couple questions here. Oh, go ahead.
I forgot to mention one thing about the capture point being the main zone now, or the main game mode now. I think that there is going to probably be some growing pains. I think there's a lot of criticism in Destiny of like objective game modes and how some of the abilities interact with objectives. I think even the size of the objectives, to be honest, like it's very small. The fact that like a bubble can cover an entire objective, or like a grenade or etc. is probably not like super beneficial. Like if the zone was bigger, that'd help. But anyways, I think that this will be a period of growing pains, but I don't know, man. I'm like a firm believer of that. This needs to happen to give them like insight of like a new like a new angle or
the next
like
step in evolution,
visibility of how they can balance around this. There's no way that these things will change or grow without them gaining the visibility to it. So I get it. You know what? Like Titan barricades, you're right. They're probably pretty strong in objective modes, or like I don't know a glacier nade covering something. But like, I just don't believe, for the devs at least as well, because they have insights, they have a lot of like metrics that they can see, and aside from obviously like community sentiment and what's being pointed at, that like they have these things to look at. And I think that having capture point as a mode, seeing how it influences people's weapon choices, how people gravitate towards what people gravitate towards, how the abilities are actually impacting the control points or objectives, like this is going to be like I really do believe that this will be a new form of insight for them, and things like Titan Barricade might actually get a little bit of attention, or a certain weapon type or whatever it is, or a super like Well of Radiance, whereas like otherwise, who knows, maybe we would have just kept talking about it, but who knows, right? Like I just think that this is a big opportunity. It's gonna probably be some growing pains, but I think this is a big opportunity for them to gain some like new perspective on insight for balancing, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, the flip side to growing pains, right, is that right now Trials is kind of just very one-dimensional, and it can get pretty stale, especially on certain maps where the maps don't have that rotational element to them, right? They have that really laney element to it, and so that just creates even more like stalemate. My point is, growing pains, the silver lining to growing pains is the gameplay won't be as stale, it won't be as one-dimensional, and so hopefully that'll be a little bit more rewarding for folks, and balance out the growing pains so that we can move forward. You're absolutely right. There's only so much that they can do off of community sentiment. They do have to have the metrics behind it to know exactly how to tune things or how things are going to play out. Best way to do that is to switch some things up, especially switching things up to the point where you can bait those metrics, right?
And stress test it. Like I'm sure people are going to go into trials and like really try and like break objective mode and be like, yeah, look, this is what's wrong with it, and use all the things that are going to be awful. And that's like, it sucks in the moment, but I think that's like, that's what they need to see. That's the data. That's the data. That's what they need to see. So and I think that's a trap. I try to be really mindful of this stuff, especially when I get frustrated on Twitter, doing stream and whatnot. And I've been frustrated, bro. But
to kind of recognize that Bungie is not going to make all these changes based on what I say. It's just like I can provide that insight, especially in my skill bracket, right? But I think we all need to kind of recognize the folks that have that community, input. Just need to recognize that they also have to have other metrics to kind of double down on that stuff to see exactly, is this actually working, how Tony says, how Drew says, is this actually being a detriment to the degree that we need to devote dev time and money towards it? Is this a priority versus something else that is in the pipeline that we don't even know about, that we're going to celebrate later on, right? It may not even be like something like AE. It may be something that's just on the flip side that's universally loved, that they're prioritizing, such as the Zoom system, right? The new Zoom normalization and rangefinder being pulled back. I'm actually really excited about that because so many more weapons in my vault are going to be viable. And it took that modifier that I was talking about in labs, because we've been doing a lot of modifiers where I was just like, no 120 hand cannons, no rangefinder. Use whatever else you want, according to the rule set. And I was able, those are the most fun that I've had like in the last year in labs, just because I was able to pull out so many different weapons and they were viable because people weren't, didn't have max range palindromes or exalted truths or, weapons that reached out and touched to the degree that they could challenge that 120 in the lobby and stuff like that. So I'm excited. Especially for season 22. I think that'll be a crazy shift in PvP. And the way that they're doing these changes, that is the hope or the optimism that I have. These changes and how they're staggering across these seasons, I do feel like, we saw, who was it that released that tweet? I think it was Shadow released that tweet where it's just like, clearly, you guys might not think that PvP is on the up and up, with how you feel about it, right? Community sentiment about it. But look at these numbers, look at these numbers. And he was just showing the fact that PvP, but also just the population in Destiny, 100%. Not actually 100%, but definitely grew. Certainly, like this season, Lightfall, like we got a lot of new players, and a lot of people are on the game every day. So the changes that that are coming down the pipeline this next season and then 22, I can see what they're doing. They're building on that. And, I'm optimistic. I've always said, even if Destiny ends up being a game that is not for me in the future, right? It ends up serving the widest group of people that it can, and the population continues to grow, but maybe it's in that center or at the lower end of new lights. I'll be happy to see it grow, just like you. Population. Yep. All right, I'm cool. I can take a break and I can go somewhere else if need be. It's just a game.
I'm playing the game at this point. I'm chilling.
I feel it. Yep, I feel it. All right, last couple. Do we know anything more about Checkmate, the new Checkmate Control playlist previously announced earlier this year, or when it'll arrive?
I don't know, but I'm super excited for this one. Like, I don't know if it's this season coming up or the one after. I really don't know. I'll be like very, very pleasantly surprised if it's this season that's coming in just a few days. That would be really awesome. But I joked about just pretending the rest of the game doesn't exist and only playing Checkmate, and just reviewing weapons in Checkmate, get a trials weapon and be like, just take it in Checkmate and pretend the rest of the game doesn't exist. I don't know, because it just sounds like I'm just so excited for this game mode. I know it might not be for everyone, but it seems like they mentioned levers like TTK levers, the way that ability energy. Actually. What's up?
And then they actually did say Season of Defiance. So I just pulled it up, actually. Yeah, so it says, great. In Season of Defiance, am I answering my own question? Tony, you could have just read this, I suppose. In Season of Defiance, we're looking at getting Countdown back in along the Countdown Rush. Sorry, scroll forward, Tony. Okay, we also aim to run a series of Crucible labs in Season of Defiance, so it's the same, including a mode where the player sandbox is dramatically changed. Weapon damage, ability uptime, and even ammo are all adjusted in a new mode tentatively titled Checkmate Control. This mode will reward players who use their smarts and their skills. So if the only way the enemy has to be able to shut you down in the past is a solo blade barrage, oh man, we feel that hurt. I have to say that they might be in trouble. This isn't all we have planned for the modes, so keep your eyes on labs for more classic and all new modes later this year. So Season of Defiance, what is that? Is that 22?
I think.
Or is that next? Oh, hold on.
I don't know. Is that 21? Next one? Oh man, I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad at the names. But you know what? If we find out it's this one coming up, I'm thrilled because I like the
No, this one's Season of the Deep. This one's Season of the Deep.
Oh, you're right. Okay, yeah, I remember this now. Okay, so
yeah.
Okay, cool, perfect.
Yeah, I'm gonna assume it's the next season after that, which would be nuts, Drew, because we'd get this on top of the Zoom change, bro.
Yeah,
that season's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, that seems stacked.
Yeah,
sure.
And then you know what's happening after that? Because I think we have one more season after that. But before we get the next yearly expansion.
Yep.
That's the season they talk about revamping the core playlists as well.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So man, we're getting a lot. We're getting a lot. Yeah, a little bit. I'm kind of feeling it. Yeah.
Exciting
All
times.
Right, I see it.
But yeah, I'm so excited for Checkmate with they mentioned different ways to obtain special ammo. I think that was one of the things listed. It sounds like it could be really, really dope and really fun. And I want to host some or maybe you can, some Checkmate. Some Checkmate private matches. It might be really cool. I'm very hopeful. I'm very, very hopeful for this. So yeah.
Gotcha. I'm right there with you because it looks like, or at least it sounds like, a playlist that caters towards improvement focused folks like ourselves. But even like you said, it would be just fun just to even go into private matches and just tune a couple things. That's something that I would love to see as well. I've said spectator mode in private matches, but also just a few more levers. I understand that we got to be careful about asking for quality dev time be put into private matches over. I mean, I prefer that get put into pubs so that I go play pubs, of course.
Yep.
But nonetheless, it would be cool, just like you said, to get some additional, a few additional levers. And for Checkmate Control, obviously, I mean, I would assume it's going to end up being in private matches and for us to, mess around with some things in there. So excited for it, just like yourself. And we look forward to Season of Defiance. All right, last question. All right, and this is last question worthy to kind of wrap things up. If there was one specific macro change to PvP that would serve it the most at this moment, what would that change be?
Oh man, that's such a hard question.
I know.
The thing that
you thought I was gonna let you off easy?
I'll give my just the thing that pops in my head first. And I really think it is more game, maybe not more game modes, more competitive game modes. I think that game modes, I really do believe this. I think that game modes have the ability to completely change the way a map is played. And the strategy, around it can completely just differ. And it just changes the experience and, just the dynamic of a map. There's an example, a really kind of basic example that I give, and I'm by no means the best Halo player in the world. I just love the game a lot. But there's a map called The Pit in Halo 3, and it was really interesting because in Capture the Flag, you wanted to control one end of it, which was called the long haul or needles side of the map. So basically, one polar, you think of the right side of it, the furthest most right side. You kind of want to control this right side of it. And then in Slayer, so in Clash, you'd want to control the complete opposite end of the map, which is where these snipers towers were. And the reason being is because it was a mix of things, where the flag was and the most optimal spawn route, or flag running route to take the flag through that had the most safety, cover, the least spawn points, the place that would, if you were standing there, make them spawn the furthest away from their flag, so obviously they can't, try and, claw back as easily, and they have to kind of go on the overextend. And then versus in Slayer, or like what was Clash, I guess the equivalent is that you wanted to control these sniper towers, and like this one area of the map called this sword and like training area is because it was it gave you the best vantage points, height advantage, and like allowed you to like kind of trap the enemy team in like the most disadvantageous place to spawn. So just kind of giving an old classic example of how. And I think this, I'm not an expert on Black Ops 2, but like, even from like if you're a COD person, like game modes, like I remember like, man, the difference between like, let's say hardpoint on slums and like capture the flag on slums with like, playing like cop car spawn trapping versus like hill rotations. Like it's just like such a different, it completely alters maps. It's just, I think that right now in Destiny, we haven't gotten a lot of good core game modes. I think they nail the fun factor in a lot of game modes. I think they do these like really cool like little like spiced up stuff in game modes that's very Destiny. That's and I think it's very fun, but I don't think it's like what we need right now. And I think what the game's starving for, in my opinion, is just like solid core game modes that work. You don't got to reinvent the wheel. We just need solid core game modes that work. Just tried and true proven game modes like the classics, like maybe there's something hardpoint-esque, I'm not sure, capture the flag, oddball, like stuff like that, where like you score a point and you score, that's it. It's just like core game modes. I think that the most recent example of this for me was Countdown Rush. Was really promising because there was no score gimmicks. It was just like you plant the bomb, you get a point. There's no weird comeback mechanic. There's not some like weird sudden death round that like, I remember the original sudden death for Rift was like 3 rifts. I was like, what the heck is this? It's like, I remember Side said this to me once. It's like, dude, it's like imagine we were playing hockey and they just decided to add more pucks to the arena. Like, like it's fun. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's got that fun factor, but it's like I think we got a lot of that in the game right now. A lot of it. I think we just need some good core stuff. Fits into a nice comp playlist. I guess maybe some comp playlist changes for the ranks. Who knows? Maybe I'm asking for too much in terms of because I'm supposed to choose one thing. I didn't mean that. I'm like on a slight at dev thing. It's a slight towards the devs. I meant that like I'm supposed to only choose one change here. But for me, it's the core game modes. I really believe that's like, I would just love to see more core game modes.
Yeah, and I'll double down on that a little bit and say that like to kind of flesh out what you said with regards to how a different game mode ends up changing the dynamic on a particular type of map, right? Maybe maps that have less rotational symmetry, something like Disjunction, just to throw that out there, right? Would benefit from just King of the Hill. Introduce King of the Hill. Okay, well, I mean, nobody's necessarily trying to like push, like I'm not trying to push spawns anymore, like make it so that King of the Hill is that objective. Controlling. It's not even like a central piece of. Yes, you're talking about like a Clash or somebody. Yeah, controlling specific spawns or pushing that spawn to flip it, etc. None of that. The objective solely is like the incentivized objective is to control some central feature on the map. Say it's like Eternity. You're controlling maybe the area that heavy spawns, right? Or maybe you're controlling Beach and it spawns randomly as well.
And there's going to be setups that come around that, right? Like there's going to be different setups for different points. Just like back in like the COD days, I'm sure if people I'm sure there's some COD players that are more experienced than me, and just like kind of talking on history, like there's gonna be setups and like spots that come up around like different points and stuff like that, and I think that can refresh maps, that can like breathe new life into like maps that we love already, or maybe that we don't love and like maybe we love them more.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Exactly, because there's certain maps I just don't even want to play, but if it was a map that was a game mode that specifically played on that map where, like I said, it's not a map that has a lot of rotational symmetry, such as Fortress, such as Javelin, right? That has like strong rotational symmetry, for example, on Javelin. But on Fortress, I'll say Fortress. Javelin, I could talk about it. I love that map. I could talk about it a little bit, though. It's increasingly become one of those maps where I think it's because of the movement that we have now. People do very effectively, myself included, just push that spawn. But maps that are big, that match the type of movement that we have in the game to the point where I'm not able to traverse that distance and just almost spawn trap it by myself. Those maps... those maps are maybe for like a capture the flag, right? You've got rotational symmetry, therefore the flag can come in from a variety of different situations. You can't just necessarily, as a team, camp spawn in that situation because you've got 3 or 4 different ways to enter the spawn and only so many people, especially if we're talking about a competitive mode, right, where it's 3 or 4v4. Now, maybe on those maps like Disjunction, King of the Hill would refresh that map. And I might enjoy that at that point, because at that point, the objective is no longer like you're heavily incentivized to control the center of the map. And I'm talking about actually be there, So that means that the entire team, or even, just one or two people aren't going to be able to like push a spawn and effectively hold that spawn down on Disjunction. It would take like 3 or 4 people. But my point is incentivize it so that the overwhelming majority of the team needs to be in the center of the map. It's either they're in, like the middle between their spawn and the point, or they're actually, on the point itself, to the point where the opposing team doesn't feel like they're trapped in spawn. They're moving out. They're trying to capture that central point. That central point may move throughout the game. It'd be interesting. You're absolutely right that some new game modes that take those sorts of things into account could end up refreshing some of these maps that we currently feel like are we're fatigued on, that don't play as well in something like Clash, for example, right?
Yep.
Cool. Drew, yo, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Dude, thank you, fun. Man. Yeah, this was really fun. A lot of thought-provoking questions. There's definitely not a lot of easy questions, so it was great. It was great. I had a lot of fun talking about this stuff. Awesome. Well, hopefully we could do it again at some point in time in the future, whenever we have some time. I'm sure that this episode right here will I'll probably get some folks, like quite a few folks, that'll be like, man, when are we gonna have Drewsky on again? I got some questions for him. I'm honored. I really am. Thank you. Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you. Folks out there, that brings us to a close of another show. Don't forget to like and subscribe for for more Destiny Massive breakdowns, and be sure to reach out on our social media and in the Discord with feedback, questions, or just to let us know what you enjoyed about this episode. Remember, you can connect to all things DMB at DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com, including Podcast versus Enemies, hosted by Court, Impetus, and St. Caber, and Between Twin Suns, a Star Wars podcast hosted by Kit Kutcha and our very own Mercules. You'll find our social links, an invite to join the conversation in Discord, episodes new and old, the occasional guidepost, and more well-written resources right there. And for that, the name is illPhysics, aka Tony. If you did not previously know me, you can find me at illPhysics on most socials, but primarily on Twitter and on Twitch and YouTube. The Discord is discord.gg/illPhysics as well. Come through, hang out with us for labs if you're looking to improve a little bit, or just hang out with Drewsky, because this dude is just there now. He's just there. I do live there. I do, in fact, live there now. Cool. Drew, where can we find you? Sign us off, brother. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Drewsky's channel, on Twitch, Drewsky's, and on Twitter, Drewsky's channel. Yeah. Yeah, and look, I'm telling you, this dude with Strand, when this decoy comes out, man, I'm just gonna be watching, because this is about to be straight content. I'll be in your streams first, lurking for when you say labs, and I'll be like, all right, let's go. Let's come out of the woodworks. Cool. Well, this was episode 298, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks again to Drew, and peace.